Have you ever wondered how one individual's unwavering commitment and idealism can shape a community and inspire future generations? If you're searching for a tale that encapsulates the power of perseverance, the significance of community, and the spirit of innovation, this book is a treasure trove. Adventures in Idealism isn't just a narrative of one man's journey. It's a beacon of hope and a testament to the impact of idealism on the real world. Adventures in Idealism is a deeply personal and inspiring account of the life of Professor H.L. Sabsovich, a pioneer in agricultural education and Jewish communal work in America. Through the heartfelt narration by his devoted wife, Catherine Sabsovich, this book offers a rich tapestry of experiences that reflect the challenges and triumphs of transforming idealistic visions into tangible realities. Why should you listen to this book? 1. Inspiration from true dedication. Professor Sabsovich's life exemplifies dedication to public service and the betterment of society. His journey from Russia to America, overcoming immense challenges to establish agricultural communities, is a source of profound inspiration. 2. Historical insights. Gain a deeper understanding of the social and historical context of Jewish immigration and the pioneering efforts in agricultural education in early 20th century America. 3. Heartfelt narration. Catherine Sabsovich's intimate recounting of her husband's life adds a personal touch, making the narrative both engaging and relatable. 4. Practical idealism. The book illustrates how practical idealism can lead to significant social change, a lesson that remains relevant today. As you delve into Adventures in Idealism, you will discover how one man's vision and hard work helped shape the future of Jewish agriculture in America and left an indelible mark on his community. This book is not just a memoir, but a blueprint for anyone looking to make a meaningful impact in their community and beyond. Foreword by Eugene S. Benjamin. Professor H.L. Sabsovich is recognized as one of the foremost figures in the field of Jewish social service. As a great part of his active life was given to the work of the Baron de Hirsch Fund, I consider it a privilege to make this acknowledgement for my colleagues and myself to his worth, his merit, and his undoubted achievements, as well as to his excellent administrative abilities as the builder of Woodbine and as the head of one of the fund's most important institutions, the Woodbine Agricultural School, and later as general agent for the Baron de Hirsch Fund. He was a very exceptional man, insofar that he combined practical knowledge in very many directions and good executive capacity, together with an idealism as to the coming achievements of the Jewish immigrants and the part they would fill in American life. It is gratifying to remember that he lived to see most of these prognostications come true. At all times, he had the full confidence of the trustees of the fund, who relied upon his integrity of purpose, breadth of viewpoint, and capacity to carry out a given program. Nothing can be added to the simple and sympathetic record written by his devoted wife, and to the excellent appreciation written by his associate, Mr. B.A. Palitz, except to say that he commanded respect, affection, and a high measure of appreciation from all those who had occasion to meet him in everyday life. Never a well man, his health was a great handicap, but still he sacrificed himself and never allowed his physical condition to interfere with his work. His death was felt by all the trustees as a great loss to the cause which we were all attempting to serve, and every trustee, in addition, felt a personal loss was sustained in taking away from us a man with whom we had always worked in complete harmony and confidence. Eugene S. Benjamin, October 20th, 1921. Chapter 1. School Days in Russia. The man to whom I was happily married for 33 years is now some 6 years dead and buried in body, but not in spirit, not in deeds. It has taken me all of these 6 years to reach the point where I can speak of him with any degree of calmness, of his character, his work, his wonderful gentleness and kindness of heart, his fine, even severe sense of duty to his family, his friends, or to the cause in which he chanced to be interested, made him beloved by all who knew him. And he always had some big cause to work for. In all the 35 years I knew him, I do not remember a stretch of time when he was not actively engaged in some task of a public character. Since his death, I have strongly felt that a life has gone out so stimulating to the youth of today and tomorrow, invaluable from whatever angle it may be considered, That, poorly as I may, I have decided to note down some of the things I know of him. In September 1881, I met my husband at the home of a dear friend of mine. He was a tall man, very slim, all legs and arms it seemed, with a small, pale face illumined by large, clear, gray-blue eyes, the features finely cut and the nobly shaped head surmounted by thick brown curls. Though only 20 years of age, he looked older because of the small beard so commonly worn by students in Russia then. He had just entered upon his second year in the law school of the Odessa University, where a brilliant career was predicted for him. It is to his younger sister that I am indebted for most of what I know of his childhood and boyhood. He was born in Berdyansk, Russia, an Azov seaport. His father died when he was not quite 4 years old, leaving his mother with 7 children, 4 boys and 3 girls. My husband was next to the youngest, and his sister, the baby of the family, was only 1.5 years old. The 2 eldest boys, big men of 14 and 12, now became the sole support of the family. While nothing more could be expected of Grisha, as they called my husband, than that he should remain in the Talmud Torah, or Hebrew school, he was there distinguishing himself as the brightest pupil. In fact, by the time he was 8, his brothers were so well pleased with his unusual ability and his love of study that they decided he must enter the gymnasium, just then opening its doors in Berdyansk. Though my husband was generally known to his Russian friends as Grisha or Gregory, he later in life used only the initials HL, signifying Hirschlob, the names formally given him by his parents. Grisha was one of the first recommended for the free scholarships which the gymnasium was offering to the best pupils of the different schools. The scholarship consisted of free tuition and free books. It meant that he would have to be supported, but though the family had to battle with great hardships, it was decided that Grisha should continue his studies. From the first year to the very last, Grisha was at the head of his classes, but the gold medal, which was rightfully his, he forfeited. It happened in this way. During the last year at the gymnasium, one of the teachers, who was greatly admired by the pupils, was dismissed for expressing a little more liberalism than was wanted. The pupils refused to return to the classroom unless this teacher was reinstated. As a result of his participation in this protest, my husband lost the right to the gold medal. By the time he was 10, he had begun to earn his living as a teacher, coaching the more prosperous classmates and preparing others for their entrance examinations. To be sure, the pay was a mere pittance, but he was the pride of the family and the talk of the town for earning it at so early an age. Money, however, did not mean much to him. He was exceedingly kind-hearted, and he was always giving lessons gratis to his less fortunate friends, especially during examination time. And so, writes his sister, he worked very hard and had very little time for play. But one great temptation he had, and that was flying kites. Whenever I was fortunate enough to get one, I knew Grisha would join me and leave his books for that sport. He was a great reader. Every moment he could spare from his lessons and coaching, he spent in reading. When we wanted to find Grisha, we had only to look to Mother's bed, and there he was, hidden in the big feather mattress and pillows, cuddled in fairyland, deep in his book. Vacation time would come, but he was still the busiest boy, for then he had to prepare pupils for entrance examinations and to coach those who had failed in the examinations at the end of the year. So altogether, he worked hard. Every year, he contributed more and more toward the support of the family, and with the best will in the world. He was so grateful to his elder brothers for giving him the chance that they had missed that he felt he could never do enough for them. So it was that working hard, denying himself that essential pleasure of childhood, play, he caught a severe cold. Inflammation settled on his lungs, and at one time we thought that we should lose him. But at last, the danger over, Grisha appeared among his schoolmates once more, a very emaciated little boy. He really looked as though he had been in the grip of death. He was so thin that I, his younger sister, carried him in my arms. I remember, though, that shortly after his illness, he suddenly began to grow and soon shot up into a tall, lank youth. It proves how high he stood in the opinion of his teachers that although he had been sick during examination time, he was promoted to the 5th class of the gymnasium without the test and with high honors. In his 8th year of school, a number of pupils at the Odessa Gymnasium were expelled for being mixed up in some working men's circles and liberal propaganda work and had to forfeit their diplomas. They applied to the Berdyansk Gymnasium and were admitted. When they came to Berdyansk, 2 of them became boarders at the house of Grisha's mother. Those 2 boys became widely known in later years, Kostya Poritz as a physician and Leova Albert as a great social worker. All 3 became very close friends. The boys from the big city exercised a great influence on the country boy and quickened his interest in matters of public welfare. They had lived in the midst of the great movements of the time. They were full of big ideas and took a great interest in the newly started revolutionary underground paper, Land and Freedom, which advocated the taking of the land by those who till it and freedom of thought for all. Berdyansk was a small country place, in no way to be compared with Odessa, but the 3 boys were not cast down. They set about organizing several self-educational clubs, each taking the lead in a club where young men and women could come together and discuss affairs of general interest. That was in 1879, a time of great activity in all Russian revolutionary circles. Among these young idealists, there was no question at the time of Jew and Christian. All worked together in the cause hand in hand, organizing clubs for the masses. Of course, these meetings were kept secret. In May, Grisha and his 2 chums graduated from the gymnasium, and Poritz and Albert left for Odessa to enter law school. Grisha followed them in August. To enable him to pursue his studies, his 2 Odessa friends, well known there, secured pupils for him in advance. So when he arrived in the city, he found that he would have about 75 rubles a month, which would enable him to support not only himself, but his younger sister. He therefore brought her from Berdyansk, secured lodgings, and began to prepare her for college entrance. This was the year that I graduated from Pillar's Gymnasium. As soon as we were out of school, 4 of the other graduates and I felt the need of doing something in an educational way for the Jewish poor. We decided to open a free school for Jewish girls who were not able to pay the fee to attend the private schools. Jewish girls were not admitted to the few elementary free schools of Russia. And yet we felt that these children, being of the poorest class, their families living in cellars and subcellars, needed a vocational as well as an elementary education. So we decided to open an elementary and vocational school for the girls, similar to the one opened a year previously for poor Jewish boys. 2 of us were delegates to meet representatives of the boys' school. One of these men was my husband. He often came to our meetings to discuss ways and means, and so energetic was the spirit of these gatherings that in a few months we opened the school for Jewish girls with 75 children. The school is now known all over Russia as the Anna Siegel School. Officially, the school had to be run as a private one because it was conducted without recognition from the government. Funds for running it had to be collected secretly, and the money was raised by holding balls, bazaars, and similar entertainments. The 2 schools were a nucleus for the development of similar schools for boys and girls, which sprang up all through the Jewish quarter. To the best of my knowledge, the original 2 schools exist today, greatly enlarged and extended, and now supported openly by the various Jewish organizations and city funds. My husband and I met frequently at the organizing conferences. Strong mutual interest ripened our friendship, and a year later, in the spring of 1881, we were formally betrothed. Chapter 2, Odessa and the Pogrom. The spring of 1881 was the most significant, the most interesting year in my husband's early life. He peacefully devoted himself to his studies, to his tutoring, to forming self-education centers, helping in the distribution of underground literature and establishing new centers. My husband counted among his friends as many Christians as Jews and visited as many Christian homes as Jewish. The question of race and creed did not exist among the intelligentsia at all. In the university, the Jewish and Christian students were on the friendliest of terms. The meetings were just of one body, the student body. The good of Russia, of its working masses, of its peasants, these were the topics that interested and united the best among its members. The autumn of 1881 changed everything. The whole spirit of the country was altered. The terrorist movement was then at its height. one high official after another having been assassinated. Tsar Alexander II himself was killed. The government needed an excuse, an explanation, a scapegoat for all the terror that was raging, for all the panic spread by the thick net of secret organizations. It was not difficult to find that scapegoat. Among the many, many terrorists, it was but natural that there should be a proportionate quota of Jews. The press, subsidized by the government, began a systematic hounding of the Jews and denounced them as the cause of all the trouble, inciting the people to riot and bloodshed. This cry found its echo in the universities. The Jewish students began to feel a change in atmosphere. They began to feel the animosity, not only of the Christian students, but of some of the professors as well. It was not enough to hear talk of pogroms on the streets, in the cafes, in the places of amusement. It finally entered the university too. A great many of the Christian students organized in a body to help kill the Jews. The Jewish students, to their bewilderment and sorrow, discovered the existence of the organized body and its terrible aim. All this made a lasting impression on my husband. Some of the Jewish students called an indignation meeting, and a self-defense league was organized. Its purpose was to protect the Jewish populace during the pogroms, which everyone knew would take place during the Passover holidays. 10 of the ablest young Jews in the student body took the lead, my husband being one of them. At once they began to organize the Jewish butchers, grain shovelers, bricklayers, and other young workers of strength and courage. They supplied everyone with any kind of tool or weapon of defense they could lay hands on, and they assigned groups of the volunteers to places in the poorest and most crowded districts of the city, where they expected the Tsar's mercenaries to do their worst, and where, on account of their extreme poverty, the victims could not buy police protection after the manner of the more wealthy Jewish citizens. And one Sunday afternoon, the 5th day of Passover and the 1st of Easter, while my husband was visiting me, the pogrom broke out. We heard shrill whistling, the smashing of windows, the wild clamor of the hoodlums, and above all, the shouts, "Kill! Kill the Jews!" My husband rushed out of the house, and that was the last I saw of him, until 3 days later I visited him in the Odessa prison. He and his fellow students were nursing the wounds they had received from the hoodlums, while they were trying to protect the homes that had been attacked by the ruffians. The police had been out the whole first day of the massacre defending the hoodlums. They had clashed with the organized self-defense in several sections of the city, and bloody fights had taken place between the pogromщики and the Jewish defenders. The police, in their righteous anger, arrested every one of the young Jewish students and flung them into jail. Despite the pressure brought to bear by the fathers of the students, a number of whom were wealthy and influential citizens, it was at least 2 weeks before their trial took place, and then it turned out to be a farce, for every one of the arrested men was released. It is interesting to note that most of these young students of the Self-Defense League became in after years well-known scientists and social workers. Alexander Krasilchek, the widely known entomologist, Vladimir Chafkin, the bacteriologist, Kalmenowitz, who became later a member of the First Russian Duma, the respected physician Kostya Puritz, and Lyova Albert, lawyer, the same youth with whom my husband became so friendly in Berdyansk. Of the last named, I must speak a little further. In 1881, when a young man of 27, Albert conceived and put into execution a brilliant and humane plan, which in this country, many years later, became well known as the Big Brother movement. He arranged with local authorities to be notified when a boy was discharged from the penitentiary, and Albert then took him in charge. He housed, fed and clothed him, taught him a trade, and showed him that one crime does not make a criminal, and that it was possible to save him both for himself and for the community. He arranged it in this way. In a set of rooms, which his mother portioned off for him in her large apartment house, he opened a vocational school. He fitted up the place with the proper accommodations so that his charges could live there, free of all expense, while they were getting their training. Then he engaged an instructor and began a systematic campaign to help unfortunate or mistaken young boys to become useful both to themselves and to the world. So successful was he that it was not long before the authorities themselves took up his plan and carried it out on a larger scale than he could afford. Thus, from his nucleus grew a chain of similar schools that reached into every corner of Russia. He had a short but glorious life, his name on the lips of all liberal Russians. He survived to see his efforts take effect, but no longer, for after he had established several homes of this character in Odessa, consumption developed and he died. There was not any one, young or old, Jew or Christian, rich or poor, illiterate or enlightened, who did not follow him either in thought or in person to his last resting place. Every class was represented at his burial. As his fame spread so rapidly, a multitude knew, loved, and appreciated him. I also wish to speak of Vladimir Chavkin. Years ago, while still in his early 30s, he was one of Pasteur's assistants. When the bubonic plague broke out in India, he was one of the first to volunteer to risk his life for the furtherance of science and humanity. He undertook, as is now a matter of common knowledge, the inoculation of the sick. Fortunately, his splendid efforts among the plague-stricken populace met with such success that his name became known all over the world. The critical months of 1881 dragged by. The sky did not clear after the thunderclap. By the time autumn came, a real movement toward emigration made itself evident in the thoughts and sentiments of the poorer Jews throughout their pale of settlement. The students who organized the Self-Defense League came together again to help shape and mold the Jewish sentiment and to bring the Jewish thought into practical channels. Accordingly, they organized the Am Olam, the Eternal People. This society was to decide upon a plan for emigration and to help the needy with funds. Some favored Palestine, some the Argentine. My husband came out strongly in favor of the United States of America, and so the purpose of the Am Olam was definitely settled as an aid and furtherance of emigration to America. Another of its objects was to show the world that a Jew was able to become a productive worker if given the proper chance. Thus, agricultural colonization took shape in their imaginations as the chief objective for future time. My husband was appointed one of the committee of the Am Olam. He opened a correspondence with the Jewish organizations in Krakow, Vienna, Paris, and London, as well as with other Russian societies, for the purpose of raising funds. I do not know the exact amount of money collected, but I do know that responses were very generous, and many, many hundreds of the desperate people were helped to emigrate. How my husband kept his health in those days I cannot tell. What with his regular college work, tutoring as a means of livelihood, and the work for the Am Olam, he rarely had more than 5 hours sleep. In January 1882, the first party sent by the society, consisting of only 6 men, but those the very finest and most intelligent, left for Brody to wait and arrange there for the other parties to arrive. By May of 1882, 3 more parties left Odessa, this time hundreds going in each band. But when the government became aware of the large flow of emigration, very stringent laws were promulgated, and it was impossible for the third party to obtain passports. To plan the work of the Am Olam therefore became much more difficult, since an organization of this character was now prohibited by the government. Delegates from organizations in other towns were sent to us. The Am Olam had to manipulate passports for all the emigrants to use, and yet keep its meetings secret. Most of the conferences were held in the house of Nuchem Rubin. It so happened that on March 13th, the head of the Odessa Gendarmerie, Strelnikov, was assassinated. He had been sent from St. Petersburg to rout out the nest of revolutionists. He had filled the prisons to capacity with the best youth of Odessa. But, in spite of all his vigilance, he himself was struck down and the assassins escaped. The police were in a frenzy and more alert than ever. They noticed that an unusual number of people frequented the Rubin home. They became suspicious and, concluding that the meetings were of a political nature, hoped for a clue, for some connection with this last terroristic act, the assassination of Strelnikov. So they decided to raid the place in the course of a big meeting which was to be held March 16th. One who took an active part in the Am Olam, then a youth of 18, a delegate from Elizabethgrad, the late Dr. Hillel Solotaroff, described the raid to me very dramatically. About 69 members of the Am Olam were present, and during the heat of discussion, a late arrival ran in, pale and trembling. "We are surrounded by police and Cossacks," he gasped. No sooner had he uttered the words than the captain of the police, with several of his Cossacks, rushed in. Looking towards the very end of the room where the speaker sat, the captain said to his men, "Take him! There he is!" The man was brought forward, but the captain looked at him and said, "No, the description calls for a different person. The man we want is tall, slim, with big gray eyes, eyeglasses, a short beard. No, this fellow does not answer the description." All present recognized that he was looking for my husband. By some lucky chance, he was elsewhere and was not intending to report until the very end of the meeting. Fortunately, the police broke up the gathering. They took the names of those present and ordered them to appear on the following day at the police station. My husband was advised early next morning by these friends to leave the city and disappear for a week or so until the trouble should blow over, as the government suspected him of being a party to the assassination. He took the warning, the more willingly that by this time all work for the four parties about to emigrate was complete. No more efforts could be made in this line for many reasons, the main one being the very strict police surveillance and their refusal to issue passports. By the end of May, the last of the parties had left for America. When my husband returned from his brief exile, he went on with his studies and completed his third year at law school. On April 25, 1882, we were married. The first letters from the members of the Am Olam in America, from men like the much-loved philosopher Bokal, from Dr. Paul Kaplan, and from Dr. Solotaroff, came full of enthusiasm. Slowly but surely, the decision was forming in my husband's mind to give up law, a profession in which he undoubtedly would have made a success, as he was considered by the faculty and the student body the most promising and brilliant man in the class. He had everything to gain by continuing with law, and had only one more year at the university. He had my father's promise of financial backing when he started to practice his profession, the ability to assist and ease life for his aged mother, to help his brothers, who had sacrificed so much to see him get his education, prospects most alluring. But sincerity in thought and purpose and great idealism were his outstanding characteristics. With his rigid uprightness and vivid sense of truth and justice, he felt that, as the leader of the Am Olam, it was not for him to choose a safe and free profession in Russia, while others were, despite their enthusiastic letters, undoubtedly enduring hardships in America. Of all the student organizers of the Self-Defense League, and later of the Am Olam, he was the only one to give up a sure career to take up the dark unknown. For in June 1882, he decided to live up to the idea he was preaching, back to the land, farming for the Jews in the new land. He would actually be their teacher and leader, and to equip himself, he would take up agriculture as a profession. Chapter 3, From Law to Agriculture. There was a storm of reproach and disapproval from my parents when they heard of my husband's decision. Agriculture as a profession, to become a plain mujik, as they saw it, an occupation so far below the dignity of an intelligent, Balabatic, respectable Jewish youth. But his decision was irrevocable. I was fully in sympathy with his idea, and in July 1882, we left for Paris, which boasted a splendid agricultural college. There, upon investigation, we found that only single men could enter, as the college was located a few miles out of Paris, and the students lived in dormitories. However, we learned soon after that Zurich in Switzerland had an excellent agricultural college, and within a month we had left Paris and reached Zurich. Here we found quite a large and interesting colony of Russian students. My husband soon passed his entrance examinations, and we settled down to a 3-year stay. It was during his third and last year that my husband wrote many articles on agriculture for the leading newspapers in Russia. These called forth splendid comment, and the practical result was that a certain Maslinikov of St. Petersburg, who in later years became Minister of Agriculture, asked him to write editorials on farming for an agricultural paper, which he was soon to publish. The course completed, in the summer of 1885, we returned to Odessa, as our friends in America, especially the late Dr. Paul Kaplan, begged us not to consider emigration at this time. All their dreams of colonization had been shattered. A few farm settlements formed in Oregon and Kansas were a total failure, and the colonists were all back in New York working in various factories. So we decided on Odessa. But even in so simple a venture as a journey back home, my husband managed to achieve something. Two of our friends in Zurich, the well-known Pavel Axelrod and George Plekhanov, were eager to smuggle into Russia a pamphlet which they had written and which they had no way of sending and distributing, as the watch on the German frontier was sharp. Russia had made a secret treaty at this time, by which Germany was to arrest and deport any escaped Russian revolutionists, and to confiscate any radical literature that might be sent through her borders from England, France, or Switzerland. By the action of this treaty, Leo Deutsch, a refugee well known here, in America, for the past 12 or 13 years, was arrested on the German frontier when he left Zurich with a large supply of revolutionary literature and handed over to the Russian authorities, who sentenced him to a long term of years in Siberia. At this juncture, Pavel Axelrod approached my husband. He told him that they had worked out a clever way of fooling the customs officials if only he would be willing to undertake the serious mission. My husband readily consented. This was the plan. We had a great many German and French scientific books. The bindings of these, consisting of sheets of paper subjected to heavy pressure and cloth-covered, were torn off. The revolutionary pamphlets were then pressed together, covered with binder's cloth, and the books rebound. As the forbidden literature was printed on the very finest tissue paper, whole editions were thus smuggled into Russia. When we arrived at Odessa, the customs officials looked into our baggage and began to examine the trunks full of books. They could not read French or German, however, so they informed us that the boxes with our clothes could be sent forward, but that the trunks containing books would have to remain until they had been thoroughly searched. My husband would be notified, they said, when they had finished examining them. The 5 following days were long and nerve-wracking, as may be imagined. But finally, the notice from the customs house came. Once more, the authorities had been fooled by the shrewdness of the revolutionists. It had never entered their heads to rip open one of the bindings, and so my husband was spared the prisons and long years in Siberia that might have been his fate. As a matter of fact, most of the Russian customs officials, being ignorant men, were so stupid that the wide-awake revolutionists generally got the better of them. With a heart full of satisfaction and relief, my husband shipped the books home at once, ripped off the bindings, and mailed the pamphlets to their destinations, where they were further distributed throughout Russia and Siberia. Close upon his return to Odessa, my husband, in quite high glee, accepted an offer from Maslenikov as the assistant editor of the forthcoming agricultural paper. He waited impatiently for the assignment, but, instead, the newly edited paper arrived with my husband's article printed in it and a letter from Maslenikov, saying that he was very sorry he would not be able to have him come to St. Petersburg, as the Swiss diploma deprived him of the right of settlement outside the Pale. The blow was hard. The question of a livelihood became again of pressing importance. The money received for articles already published had been spent as fast as it came. Not having a Russian diploma, my husband could not obtain a position as manager of an estate, for he was now compelled to live only within the Pale. So he turned to his good old standby, tutoring. Chapter 4. Among the Don Cossacks. By the early spring of 1888, my husband received a letter from a Professor Kuznetsov, the director of a teacher's seminary in the Caucasus, in eastern Russia, saying he had read my husband's articles in agriculture, that he was very much interested in them and in the man who wrote them, that he had a big estate 30 versts from Yesk, and that he would be very glad to secure my husband's services as manager of the estate. Remembering his sad experience with Mr. Maslenikov, editor of agriculture, my husband answered Professor Kuznetsov, asking him whether he realized that it was a Jew to whom he was offering the position. An answer came back stating that he was above the question of race and creed. He put character and manhood above all, he said, and if willing to take the position, nobody need ever interfere with you in any way. He offered him 600 rubles a year, with full maintenance for himself and family. Always a man to whom money was distinctly a means and never an end in itself, my husband was well satisfied with the terms. Often have I heard him give expression to the freedom that he felt when his earnings were well disposed of, his monthly check sent to his mother, and later on to an older widowed sister, and his own modest requirements paid for. He would then say, gratefully, as one relieved of a burden, "No more money, no more worry. I have given it all where it belongs." In accepting the offer from the Caucasus, he was only too happy at the opportunity to do the work he had been preparing himself for in the previous 3 years. In March 1886, my husband, our little daughter Marie, and I left for Yeysk, a town east of Rostov, on the border of the Caucasus, the very heart of the country of the Don Cossacks. The estate consisted of about 2,000 acres of land. Parts of it were subleased to Lets, who had emigrated from Lapland several decades before, and the rest to the native Cossacks. My husband's mission was to bring the land that had been subleased to a higher degree of cultivation. The property was laid out mainly in small fruit orchards, yielding apples, pears, plums, and grapes, and in large fields of rye, wheat, and corn. As soon as we arrived at the estate, a 3-room house was built for us, and in this we bestowed ourselves comfortably and hopefully. My husband's public spiritedness, which played so great a part in his nature, showed itself immediately. First, he called together all the tenants of the estate under his management and informed them that his knowledge was at their service, that he was always ready, nay, eager to give them advice in whatever capacity they needed it, agricultural advice above all. That whole summer, with 1/2 men, he worked hard to improve the soil, the shrubs, the crops, not only to make them profitable, but to make of this big farm a model for his tenants and for all the farmers in the neighborhood, far and wide. He was the broadly enlightened agriculturist who knew of the latest and best ways of tilling the soil among a very ignorant and backward peasantry. From near and far, they began to come to him for advice. The very first year showed good results from his improved methods. The peasants took eager note of it, and his name was on everyone's lips. The hard summer and fall season over, my husband started a course of lectures on the right way of tilling the soil. Peasants would come, rain or shine, with their wives and grown-up sons and daughters, often from versts and versts around. The big empty barn saw life. It was crowded to its full capacity with peasants, very eager to learn and to devour every word. And after the lectures were over, the farmers would talk about many a topic of the day, hurling question after question at my husband, so that time and again it would be well after midnight before the gatherings broke up. These gatherings took place Saturday evenings, and eagerly did the neighbors wait for those Saturdays to come. What a source of enlightenment it was for them. If any of the tenants and neighbors knew, or even surmised, that the man they grew to be so fond of, the man they looked up to as a true friend, the man they could go to in any kind of trouble, and who always not only lent them a sympathetic ear, but stretched out the hand of friendship and helped remove whatever obstacle was in their way. If I say, these men surmised that the manager was a Jew, they never in any way made us feel it. They all felt too great an admiration for the Christ-like kindliness of the man, and this they soon had additional cause to value. That very winter diphtheria broke out among the children in one of the villages about 3 miles from our estate, and in a few days nearly all the children were victims of the terrible pestilence. The ignorance of the peasants was unbounded. The only doctor they had was a quack, who lived many miles away. As soon as my husband heard of the trouble, he drove to the stricken village. He found no quarantine whatever. The sick and the well, young and old, slept in one large bed in the one room, where also were herded for protection from the bitter cold the newborn calf and lamb, the ducks and chickens, all huddled together as was quite customary. And the windows were kept tightly shut. The stifling air and the condition of the room may be imagined. The first thing my husband did was to drive over to Yeysk, the nearest town, which was very fortunate in having a physician it could call its own. This man was a true friend of the peasant and the poor laboring man. He was the leading spirit of every progressive undertaking in that town and had become a devoted friend of my husband's, who knew that he would find a responsive chord in the doctor's heart. He had no trouble in bringing him back at once, with all the necessary medicines. They separated the dangerously sick from those who could be saved, and together they did whatever could be done to prevent the spread of the malady. Of the 22 children in this village, only 7 survived. A week later, my husband started a course of lectures on health and sanitation, the doctor friend helping him with material for the lectures. A collection was taken up from all the families in the neighboring villages, and a supply of necessary drugs was purchased and installed in each. Exceedingly interesting were these 2 years we spent far away from civilization, but in close touch with people for whom we could do so much. There was work for me to do, as well as my husband, for while he was away lecturing and talking to the older folk, I taught the youngsters reading and arithmetic. There was no school anywhere within miles. A few glimpses of the standards and character of the people among whom we lived may be in place here. They were a mixture of Lets and of Don Cossacks, freely intermarried. Often, on Sunday afternoon, my husband and I would sit on the steps of our bungalow, and several neighbors, with their families, young and old, would join us. I remember one Sunday afternoon, we were sitting and talking on various topics of interest to the peasants, and my husband asked one of them the reason why nearly every peasant, even those who were quite young, have a second and sometimes a third wife. The answer came: childbirth and the complications that often followed. These were, in nearly every case, the cause of death. And no wonder. Whenever a woman gave birth to a child, especially if it happened during the summer months, during harvest, when every hand was needed in the field, as soon as she had received first aid from an elderly woman neighbor or some quack, a doctor was miles away and time too precious for anyone to drive for him. She was not only left alone, but expected to take full charge of all the burdens of the most primitive peasant household. And it should be remembered that during the harvest, there are 2 or 3 extra men hired to help gather in the crops, and that these are additional mouths for her to feed. Naturally, at times, the strain would be too great, and she would die. Several times I was astonished to find a woman who had given birth to a child a day or 2 previously at the family wash tub, or cooking the dinner, or kneading the family supply of coarse black bread, a task which alone would tax the strength of any man. So much for the legend about the easy childbirth of the peasant woman. Once a young peasant, married only 2 years, and known as quite a model husband, stepped in, and during our conversation asked me, "How often does your husband beat you?" I caught my breath at the question, but looking into his face saw that he inquired in dead earnest, and to tell him that my husband never gave me a beating would appear to him a very poor joke indeed. So I answered, "About once a year, sometimes twice, before the biggest holidays." He nodded approvingly. "You see, Barina, lady," he remarked, "I give my wife a beating on or before every holiday, and in Russia they do come very, very often. You know," he continued, "the best of wives will never respect or think much of her man unless he gives her a sound beating now and then. Among the Russian proverbs is one, and a proverb usually tells the tale: love your wife as your own soul, but shake her like a pear tree. I remember, however, the case of a woman whom my husband saved from a different sort of beating. The story will also serve to show the respect in which the peasants held him. We had one farmer, a Cossack, who was married to a Lettish woman. He and his family shared one izba, cabin, with his father-in-law, a common arrangement among the peasants. The old man kept his savings of a lifetime, about 1,000 rubles, in his trunk. Few of the peasants were enlightened enough to keep their money in a bank, and the bank, in most cases, was miles away. One day, the old man found out that the money, all his savings, was gone. His suspicions at once fell on his son-in-law, who was a drunkard, and who beat his wife not only on or before a holiday, but whenever the spirit moved him, and that was oftener than I should like to tell. His father-in-law and his wife reproached him, and in a drunken rage he picked up an axe and ran after his wife. Their cabin was about a block from our bungalow. She ran straight for our house, screaming, "Save me! Save me! Petrich is at my heels to kill me!" My husband, who was standing outside the house and saw from afar the drunkard running, pushed the terrified woman inside our door and closed it on her. He himself stood there defenseless to meet the frenzied man. Seeing my husband so cool before him, he seemed to sober in a moment, and then my husband, in a tense, commanding voice, exclaimed, "Stop, Petrich! Have you lost your mind to run wild with an axe? Give it to me at once!" The instinctive awe and respect that any peasant has for authority won the day. As by a miracle, without a word, he handed the axe to my husband, and the woman's life was saved. Another incident will show the sentiment of the peasants towards my husband. The nephew whom my grandmother brought with her on a visit, and left with us during the winter, was an exceedingly mischievous lad of 12. One day, while playing in a peasant's izba, he approached the icon and cut off the legs and pierced the eyes of a picture of St. Nicholas that hung on the wall. This was a crime against religion unpardonable, especially when committed by a Jewish boy. In any other part of Russia, such an act would have immediately led to a pogrom. As it was, the peasant swore vengeance. He was a very bitter and quarrelsome man, so we had reason to be anxious. Unhappily, too, a few days later, his little daughter, a child of 6, became sick and died. Before she fell ill, she had had a childish quarrel with our nephew, and he had given her a spanking. And now she was dead. The peasant had, seemingly, sufficient reason for a deep grudge against us. While the funeral was in full progress, and my husband entered the house to offer our condolences, the father of the girl stood up and amid a dead silence exclaimed, pointing at my husband, "His nephew, the Jew, killed my child." The situation was critical, but one of the oldest and most respected men among them rose and said, "Mikhailich, have you a heart? Have you no fear of God? This is not the time to wrangle. Besides, we all know Gregory Konstantinovich too well, and know what he has done and is doing for all of us, to lay blame to him. What troubles are you brewing? If his nephew did wrong, we will see to it later. Let us proceed, and do not let us defame the holy services of the funeral further." By the nodding of the heads of all present, one could see that they were in full accord with the sentiments expressed by their elder. Thus, a situation that might have ended tragically was relieved. I recall also another Sunday afternoon. The sun is sinking low, shedding its last glorious rays on the large orchard before us, and gilding, as far as the eye can reach, the full ripe ears of corn, rye, and wheat. From afar, the bleating of the flock is heard, the shepherds bringing it in. Soon, the white masses of the sheep are seen huddled against the sky. Nearer and nearer they come, the whole large field covered thickly, as with a snowy weed. The flaming tops of the golden grain furnish a rich foreground. Among the dim masses we can soon distinguish the figures of the shepherds and hear their songs and cries mingled with the bleating of the flock. Closer and closer comes the weird music of the balalaikas, the rich sound of the concertina. The songs, the instruments, the whistling, the bleating of the sheep all produce a confused but intense harmony. The setting sun, the thousands of shifting, surging bodies, the sun-kissed grain, seem to make up a huge stage setting, depicting the pastoral life of these simple peasants. That scene has left an impression on me which lasts to this day. To add to the brilliance of the picture, both the men and the women had their best Sunday clothes on. The women wore their gay-colored, 4-yard-wide short skirts with the blouses of snowy white homespun linen, low-necked, wide-sleeved, richly embroidered in blue and red cross-stitch work. Each had a wide, bright sash about her waist, and on her bosom beads of every color, every description, row on row. To complete the richness and gaiety of that national costume, there were ribbons, some of them fastening the long braids of hair that hung down the back, and some going to tie up the beads. Never was there a more brilliant and tantalizing display of color. The men in their Sunday attire were a fine sight too, short breeches of cloth or velvet tucked into the high boots, over the breeches a gay red shirt, buttoned on one side, called for that reason kosovorotko, a bright girdle giving additional dash of color, and, to complete the costume, a high cap which only the Don Cossacks wear in Russia, and which only they know how to wear. The ensemble was so enchanting that, inspired by it, my husband asked a girl and boy of about 17, who were known as good dancers, to dance for us. Everybody was glad to do what would please Gregory Konstantinovich. So, Some of the shepherds passing by with their instruments were called, and then we saw the real Russian dance. The girl and boy were beautiful types of the Don Cossack. Pure, unmixed blood was theirs. Tall, graceful, with the athletic vigor that only ever outdoor life can give, their faces strong and handsome with the traits that centuries of warrior forefathers had impressed upon them. In richly colored national costume, they presented an unforgettable picture. Nearby, in front of the big barn, was a platform. We settled ourselves around it. Then, to the music of concertinas, mouth organs, and balalaikas, accompanied by whistling and singing and clapping of hands from the whole crowd, they started. I have seen many a dancer in later years, but the pagan grace and joy of life expressed in every movement, the dash, the fire, the wonderful setting nature provided, has never, to my mind, been excelled or equaled. But the pleasant memories of our life among the peasants draw to a close. 10 miles away, in a neighboring stanitsa, as the Cossack villages are called, lived the old father of the man who owned the estate. He was an Orthodox priest. He had been taught that the Jews had killed Jesus Christ, that the Jews were a far inferior race, that the Jews kill innocent Christian children and use their blood to make Passover matzos, that all Jews were usurers, and such other ugly distortions of fact as the Russian government could use to fling among the dark, ignorant masses of people to avert their attention from the real causes of trouble. To this old priest, every Jew was a most hateful person. Besides, long before he found out that my husband was a Jew, he developed a grudge against him. It was the old man's custom to come to the estate and carry away loads of fruit, vegetables, corn, and whatever he could lay his hands on. He expected to do the same thing while my husband was the manager on his son's estate. Now, while my husband was perfectly willing to let him have a reasonable quantity of the produce for his home table, he would not allow an extravagant robbing of the farms, as he had to show the owner the practical results of his farming methods. A clash could hardly be avoided. It happened that my husband's grandmother decided to come and visit us, and she set out without informing us of her arrival. She stopped at the stanitsa, at the priest's house, to inquire how to reach her grandson. Then only did he find out that the man who was managing his son's estate was a Jew. This was more than his pious Christian soul could bear. He began to bombard his son with letters, imploring him to consider what he was doing, begging him to think of his soul, his afterlife. And although his son had written to my husband again and again to tell him how much he was pleased with the improvements and the results obtained in so short a time from his methods, how much he appreciated the splendid relation between my husband, the tenants, and all the neighboring villagers, yet the passionate, incessant appeals of the father to his son had their effect. In February 1887, with our 2 daughters, Marie and Vera, we left for America. The 2 experiences, one with the editor of agriculture and the other with the owner of the Caucasus estate, showed my husband clearly that with his profession he could have no place in Russia. In June 1887, on the steamer Fulda, with 2,000 rubles given us by my mother, we arrived in New York. Dr. Kaplan and a few other friends met us at Castle Garden. Chapter 5. Facing the New World. Can you imagine all the hopes and dreams that were fluttering in our hearts on our arrival? Yet the first encouraging words of our friend Kaplan were, "For God's sake, why did you come here? I sent 2 letters imploring you to remain at home." We had left, however, before his letters reached us. Not that it would have made any difference if we had received them. We had no choice but to emigrate. A cousin of mine, a photographer named Solomon Kaufman, was among those who waited for us on arrival. He took us to his home on Eldridge Street, where he, his wife, their baby, and a boarder were living in a 2-room flat. I must mention here a singular incident in which a fellow passenger of ours played a chief part. With us on the steamer was a Pole who my husband had befriended on the trip. As he had not a soul to go to, my cousin very kindly offered him hospitality for a few days until he should find himself. On the following day, the young Pole left the house, saying that he was going out for a stroll. That was the very last we ever saw or heard of him. His valise and his few belongings were never claimed. He must have been lost trying to find his way home. The confusing sameness of the streets and houses must have misled him, and owing to his inability to speak either English or Jewish, he was swallowed up in the mammoth city. All our search for him was fruitless. Whoever has read that wonderful story of Korolenko's After Bread will remember that the plot deals with a very similar incident, except that there, the central figure is a girl. We stayed for several days at my cousin's, who did his utmost to make us comfortable. The first evening, the little flat was breathlessly hot. When bedtime came, my cousin, draping himself in a sheet and taking a pillow in his hand, casually remarked that he and his boarder were going up to the roof to sleep, and if we wished, we could follow him, as it really was airier there. It looked so novel, so funny to me, that we decided to follow his example. And when, wrapped in sheets, our pillows in hand, we reached the roof, we saw, as far as the eye could reach, white figures stretched out on all the adjoining roofs. Certainly, it would have been stifling to sleep indoors, so, after another laugh, I settled down to the good night's rest, which our fatigue ensured us. A few nights later, when we went to sleep at another friend's place, Cremont's, the same funny thing happened. Towards midnight, young and old, wrapped in white sheets, made a procession toward the roof. These friends of mine had another trouble. They did not know how to get rid of the bedbugs which were thick in the walls. They were of exceedingly careful habits and kept their rooms scrupulously clean, but it seemed that only the burning of the tenement they lived in would have saved them from the pest. We had been just a week in America when an older brother of my husband's, whom he had helped to escape from military service in Russia and had sent off to America with the second party of the Am Olam, heard of our arrival in New York. He was living in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, where he had a small picture frame store. He came to see us and advised my husband to take his family and go with him to Pittsfield, sich ausgerenen, as he remarked. The following day, we left for Pittsfield. My husband became the utility man in his brother's picture store. The rapidity with which he learned English is worthy of mention. His brother and his brother's friends, who were nearly all illiterate men, were amazed that a man only a week in this country should read the English printed papers and understand the gist of them as well as they, who were 5 years in the country. It seemed miraculous to them. But a man who had had 6 or 7 years of Latin, Greek, German, and French would naturally read English and understand it without much effort. For 2 weeks, my husband helped to make picture frames and made himself generally useful about the store. But his education, particularly his knowledge of chemistry, made him feel he could use his abilities to better advantage. His brother suggested peddling matches, saying that, to his knowledge, every successful man in America had started just that way. If peddling was the first step necessary to success, my husband was willing to try it. Only he thought he would apply his knowledge to it. He bought all necessary chemicals from a traveling peddler and bottles of all kinds and sizes, many of them far from dainty and beautiful. What was his idea? On our big kitchen stove, he began to make perfumes. Several unexpected explosions occurred, one of which set the chimney afire. In the chimney, as it happened, we kept our official papers and documents. They were all burned. In about 3 weeks, after all kinds of difficulties, after various experiments and failures, during which both he and the house were in lively danger of being burned, he had a stock of perfumes ready to sell. To peddle his own manufactured goods was much more dignified than to sell matches, my husband felt. Pittsfield had many factory villages on its outskirts. With a newly purchased satchel, heavily laden with his bottles, he set out to dispose of his perfumes. In his fine European suit of clothes, with his intelligent face and refined, gentle, sympathetic manner, he made a striking appearance. The people were used to seeing pack peddlers, but never a peddler who looked like that before. From factory to factory, from village to village, he walked. Hardly ever did anybody refuse to buy, and he would come home exhausted, with an empty valise. Still, after 2 months of very hard work, he found that he could not provide suitably for himself and his family. Meanwhile, our friends had written us advising us to return to New York City. They had heard of the wonderful success my husband was making in manufacturing and selling perfumes. The 5 months of our stay in Pittsfield had indeed been beneficial in one way. We lived there among Americans only, and nolens volens we had to speak English, so that, In the 5 months, we learned to converse in that language. Back to New York now, my husband went in search of work. After fruitless wandering for 2 weeks, he was told by a friend studying at Columbia University, that same Dr. Kaplan, that one Henry Rice was looking for a chemistry tutor for his son. My husband went to see Mr. Rice, whose son was to be prepared for the Columbia entrance examination. Everything was comfortably settled when the question of a laboratory came up. Fortunately, Dr. Kaplan knew a professor, Baron de Taub, a Russian by birth, who kept a private preparatory school for boys. My husband went to see him, and Baron de Taub was more than pleased to allow the use of his laboratory. So the very next day, the agreement with Mr. Rice to prepare his son for college, teaching him daily from 10 to 12, was made for the princely sum of $10 a week. Thus, at the end of July, 1888, we were settled in New York City. My husband was teaching chemistry to young Rice, and Dr. Kaplan found me a position as a private teacher in a wealthy family for the coming school term. Our friends began to drop in on us, and life began to be interesting again. But now I must tell of another blow that nearly broke my husband's heart. Before he left for America, he had succeeded in collecting 2,000 rubles for the benefit of the emigrants. This money was given to a banker in Odessa who promised to send it to New York through his firm. Arriving in America, we waited for several months, but not a penny came. Finally, my husband wrote to his brother in Odessa, who was acquainted with the banker. He received an answer saying that the man had become a bankrupt and that all the money was gone. This loss was hard to bear. All the struggle, the sacrifices made to gather this amount had been in vain. The people for whom it was intended were badly in need of it. The first few days, my husband's grief was intense. He would not be comforted, but soon he arose, determined to start anew. It happened that in September 1888, the Russian Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Yermolov, was sent by his government to visit the United States. He was commissioned to make a thorough study of the farming methods here and to send back an account of them in regular weekly reports. When he learned that Mr. Sabsovich, an agricultural expert, was residing in New York, he expressed a desire to make his acquaintance, and they met. After a few hours of conversation, Yermolov invited my husband to accompany him to different points of interest and to write the reports to be sent back to Russia. This offer was accepted, and together they made a thorough inspection of the agricultural methods of the eastern and western states. By the end of January, the minister had left for Russia. When my husband returned to New York, he was full of new ideas about agricultural methods. He immediately wrote a long series of articles for the Jewish press on the benefits of farming, which were well received. Chapter 6. A New Opportunity. In the early spring of 1889, my husband received a letter from a certain Mr. Harris of Vineland, New Jersey, saying that he had read my husband's articles on agriculture in the Jewish press and that he was very much interested in them. He stated that he had bought a large tract of land, about 500 acres, in Vineland, and that he would like to see my husband with a view to offering him a position as manager of the farm. My husband was delighted at this new prospect. He went to Vineland and was much pleased with the appearance of the place. It was a beautiful farm, with rolling fields, orchards, and vineyards, all in good condition. Mr. Harris offered him a salary of $750 a year, with a house and full maintenance for the family. The terms were satisfactory, and my husband accepted the offer. In April 1889, we moved to Vineland. The house provided for us was a large, comfortable one, with a spacious garden. The farm was in excellent condition, and my husband set to work with enthusiasm. He introduced many new methods of cultivation, and the results were soon apparent. The yield of the crops increased, and the quality of the produce improved. My husband's success attracted the attention of the neighboring farmers, who began to seek his advice. He was always ready to help them, and his knowledge and experience soon made him a popular and respected figure in the community. He also started a series of lectures on agriculture, which were well attended by the local farmers. In the meantime, I was busy with the education of our children. We had 3 daughters, Marie, Vera, and the youngest, Rose, who was born in Vineland. I also took an active part in the social life of the community and made many friends. One of the most memorable events of our stay in Vineland was the visit of a delegation from the Jewish Agricultural and Industrial Aid Society. This society was interested in promoting Jewish agricultural settlements in the United States, and they were very much impressed with the success of the Vineland farm. They invited my husband to New York to discuss the possibility of starting similar settlements in other parts of the country. My husband went to New York and had several meetings with the leaders of the society. They were very enthusiastic about the idea, and it was decided to start a new settlement in the state of Virginia. My husband was offered the position of manager of this new settlement with a salary of $1,000 a year. The prospect of a new and larger field of work was very tempting, and after some consideration, my husband accepted the offer. In October 1890, we left Vineland and moved to Virginia. The new settlement was located in a beautiful valley surrounded by mountains. The land was fertile, but it needed a lot of work to be brought into cultivation. My husband set to work with his usual energy and enthusiasm. He organized the settlers, distributed the land, and introduced modern methods of farming. The first few years were very hard. The settlers were mostly poor immigrants with little experience in farming. But my husband's patience and perseverance gradually overcame the difficulties. The settlement began to prosper, and the settlers became more confident and self-reliant. During these years, my husband wrote many articles on agriculture for various newspapers and magazines. He also published a book on the subject, which was well received and widely read. His reputation as an expert in agriculture grew, and he was frequently invited to speak at agricultural conferences and meetings. Our life in Virginia was full of hard work, but it was also full of satisfaction. We felt that we were doing something worthwhile, something that would benefit not only ourselves, but also the community. We made many friends among the settlers and the neighboring farmers, and our home was always open to visitors. The years passed quickly, and before we knew it, 10 years had gone by. The settlement had grown and prospered, and my husband's work had been crowned with success. But the time had come for a change. My husband felt that he had done all he could for the settlement, and he was ready for a new challenge. In the summer of 1900, we decided to move to New York City. My husband had been offered a position as an agricultural expert with a large firm, and he felt that this would give him an opportunity to use his knowledge and experience in a new and broader field. We left Virginia with mixed feelings. We were sad to leave the friends we had made and the work we had done, but we were also excited about the new opportunities that awaited us in New York. Our life in New York was very different from what we had been used to. The pace was faster, and the demands on my husband's time and energy were greater. But he rose to the challenge and soon made a name for himself in the agricultural world. He continued to write articles and books on agriculture, and he was frequently invited to speak at conferences and meetings. His work brought him into contact with many interesting and influential people, and he enjoyed the intellectual stimulation of his new environment. As for me, I found plenty to do in New York. I became involved in various social and charitable organizations, and I made many new friends. Our children were growing up and doing well in school, and our life was full and satisfying. Looking back on those years, I can see that they were some of the happiest and most fulfilling of our lives. We had faced many challenges and overcome many obstacles, but we had also achieved a great deal. My husband's work had brought us not only material success, but also the satisfaction of knowing that we had made a difference in the lives of many people. Chapter 7: The Beginning of the Industrial Removal Office. The summer of 1900 found us settled in New York City. My husband had taken up his new position as an agricultural expert with a large firm, and I was adjusting to our new life in the bustling metropolis. Our children were enrolled in schools, and we were beginning to make new friends and acquaintances. It was during this time that my husband became involved with the Industrial Removal Office, IRO. This organization was established to aid the Jewish immigrants who were arriving in New York in large numbers. The goal of the IRO was to distribute these immigrants throughout the United States, where they could find better opportunities and avoid the overcrowded conditions of the New York tenements. The IRO aimed to provide Jewish immigrants with the means to move to other cities and towns where they could find work and build new lives. This work was close to my husband's heart, as it combined his interest in social welfare with his expertise in agriculture and community development. My husband's role in the IRO was multifaceted. He was responsible for assessing the needs of the immigrants and finding suitable locations for them to settle. He worked closely with local communities, businesses, and agricultural societies to ensure that the immigrants would be welcomed and supported in their new homes. One of the first projects he undertook was the establishment of a Jewish agricultural colony in New Jersey. This project involved purchasing land, recruiting settlers, and providing them with the necessary training and resources to succeed as farmers. My husband's experience and knowledge in agriculture were invaluable in making this project a success. The New Jersey colony was just the beginning. Over the next few years, my husband helped to establish numerous other colonies and settlements across the United States. These included agricultural communities, as well as industrial and urban settlements. Each project required careful planning and coordination, and my husband worked tirelessly to ensure that the immigrants had the best possible chance of success. In addition to his work with the IRO, my husband continued to write and lecture on agricultural and social issues. His articles and books were widely read, and he became a well-known figure in both the Jewish and agricultural communities. He was frequently invited to speak at conferences and meetings where he shared his knowledge and experiences with others. Our life in New York was busy and fulfilling. We were surrounded by a vibrant community of friends and colleagues, and we enjoyed the cultural and intellectual opportunities that the city had to offer. Our children were growing up and thriving in their new environment, and we felt that we were making a positive contribution to society. The work of the IRO was not without its challenges. There were many obstacles to overcome, including prejudice and discrimination against the Jewish immigrants, as well as the logistical difficulties of relocating large numbers of people. But my husband was undeterred. He believed passionately in the mission of the IRO and was committed to helping the immigrants build better lives for themselves and their families. One of the most rewarding aspects of his work was seeing the positive impact it had on the lives of the immigrants. Many of them had arrived in New York with little more than the clothes on their backs, fleeing persecution and poverty in their homelands. Through the efforts of the IRO, they were able to start anew, finding work, building homes, and becoming productive members of their new communities. My husband's work with the IRO continued for many years, and it became one of the most significant and fulfilling periods of his life. He was deeply committed to the cause and took great pride in the successes of the immigrants he helped. His efforts were widely recognized and appreciated, and he received many accolades for his contributions to the Jewish community and to American society as a whole. As I look back on those years, I am filled with a sense of pride and gratitude. We faced many challenges and hardships, but we also experienced great joy and satisfaction in our work. My husband's dedication and passion were an inspiration to me and to all who knew him. His legacy lives on in the countless lives he touched and in the communities he helped to build. Chapter 8: The Kishinev Massacre and the Exodus. In April 1903 came the terrible news of the Kishinev Massacre. The Jewish world was stunned. A pogrom of such savagery, such brutality, had not been witnessed for decades. The cries of the wounded and dying echoed around the globe, reaching every heart. The horror of it penetrated deep into the Jewish soul, shaking the very foundations of our existence. The news of the massacre spread rapidly. Newspapers reported the events with shocking headlines. The photographs and descriptions of the devastation were beyond belief. The stories of men, women, and children being brutally murdered, of homes being ransacked and destroyed, filled everyone with a sense of despair and hopelessness. It was a dark time for all of us. My husband, deeply affected by the tragedy, was among the first to respond to the call for help. He joined the newly formed Kishinev Relief Committee, which aimed to raise funds and provide assistance to the survivors. He worked tirelessly, speaking at meetings, writing articles, and reaching out to the Jewish community to gather support for the victims. In the wake of the massacre, a great wave of emigration began. Thousands of Jews, fearing for their lives, sought refuge in America. They arrived at Ellis Island, weary and traumatized, seeking a new beginning. The influx of immigrants put immense pressure on the existing infrastructure, and the need for organized support became even more critical. The Industrial Removal Office, IRO, already engaged in relocating Jewish immigrants, now faced a monumental task. My husband, with his experience and dedication, took on a leadership role in managing this crisis. He coordinated efforts to find homes and jobs for the new arrivals, working with communities across the country to ensure that they were welcomed and supported. One of the most significant projects during this period was the establishment of the Galveston movement. This initiative aimed to direct Jewish immigrants to the port of Galveston, Texas, instead of New York City. The goal was to distribute the immigrants more evenly throughout the United States, alleviating the overcrowded conditions in New York and giving the newcomers better opportunities to integrate into American society. My husband played a crucial role in the Galveston movement. He traveled to Texas to oversee the arrangements, working closely with local officials and community leaders. The first group of immigrants arrived in Galveston in 1907, and the movement continued for several years, successfully resettling thousands of Jews in the Midwest and Western states. Throughout this challenging period, my husband never lost sight of the importance of education and self-reliance. He believed that the key to successful integration was providing the immigrants with the skills and knowledge they needed to build new lives. He organized vocational training programs, English language classes, and educational initiatives to help the newcomers adapt to their new environment. The work was demanding, and the challenges were many. There were moments of doubt and frustration, but my husband's unwavering commitment to the cause kept him going. He was driven by a deep sense of duty and a belief in the resilience and potential of the Jewish people. His efforts brought hope and stability to countless families, giving them a chance to rebuild their lives. Our home in New York became a hub of activity. We hosted meetings, welcomed visitors from all over the country, and provided a temporary haven for many of the new arrivals. Our children, Marie, Vera, and Rose, grew up in an environment filled with purpose and dedication. They witnessed firsthand the impact of their father's work and learned the values of compassion and service. The years passed and the immediate crisis subsided, but the work of the IRO and the Galveston movement left a lasting legacy. The communities established during this time flourished, and the immigrants who had been given a chance to start anew became contributing members of American society. My husband's vision and leadership played a significant role in this success. Looking back, I am filled with pride and gratitude. We faced immense challenges, but we also achieved great things. My husband's dedication and passion were a beacon of hope during a dark time, and his legacy lives on in the countless lives he touched. His work was a testament to the strength and resilience of the Jewish people, and his contributions will be remembered for generations to come. Chapter 9. The South Jersey Colony. The years following the Kishinev massacre and the wave of immigration that ensued saw continued efforts to provide support and opportunities for Jewish immigrants in America. One of the most significant projects during this period was the establishment of the South Jersey Colony, an agricultural settlement designed to help immigrants become self-sufficient farmers. In 1906, the Jewish Agricultural and Industrial Aid Society, JIS, decided to purchase a large tract of land in South Jersey for the purpose of creating a new agricultural colony. My husband, with his extensive experience and knowledge in agriculture, was asked to take charge of this new venture. He accepted the challenge with enthusiasm, seeing it as an opportunity to put his ideals into practice and help his fellow Jews build a better future. The land purchased for the colony was a vast expanse of fertile soil, ideal for farming. It was located near the town of Rosenheim, which had a small Jewish farming community. The goal was to establish a self-sustaining agricultural settlement where immigrants could learn modern farming techniques, grow their own food, and eventually become independent farmers. My husband began by organizing the settlers, who were mostly recent immigrants from Eastern Europe. They were eager to work and learn, but they lacked experience and knowledge in farming. My husband provided them with training and guidance, teaching them the best methods for planting, cultivating, and harvesting crops. He introduced modern agricultural practices and equipment, helping the settlers to increase their productivity and improve the quality of their produce. The early days of the South Jersey colony were filled with hard work and determination. The settlers faced many challenges, including harsh weather conditions, pests, and the difficulty of adapting to a new way of life. But they were determined to succeed, and my husband's leadership and support played a crucial role in keeping their spirits high and their efforts focused. One of the key aspects of the colony's success was the sense of community and cooperation among the settlers. They worked together, sharing their knowledge and resources and supporting each other in times of need. My husband encouraged this spirit of collaboration, organizing community events, educational programs, and social gatherings that brought the settlers closer together and strengthened their bonds. The South Jersey colony soon began to thrive. The settlers' hard work paid off, and the fields yielded abundant crops. The colony became known for its high-quality produce, which was sold in local markets and provided a steady source of income for the settlers. As the colony grew, it attracted more immigrants who were eager to join the thriving community and benefit from the opportunities it offered. My husband also established a cooperative association within the colony, allowing the settlers to pool their resources and collectively market their produce. This cooperative model not only increased their bargaining power and profitability, but also fostered a sense of unity and shared purpose among the settlers. Education was another important aspect of life in the South Jersey colony. My husband believed that knowledge and skills were essential for the settlers' success and integration into American society. He established schools and vocational training programs for both children and adults, ensuring that everyone in the colony had access to education and opportunities for personal and professional growth. The success of the South Jersey colony was widely recognized, and it became a model for other agricultural settlements. My husband's innovative approach and dedication to the cause earned him a reputation as a leader and pioneer in Jewish agricultural development. His work inspired similar projects across the country, contributing to the broader movement of Jewish agricultural colonization in America. The impact of the South Jersey colony extended beyond the immediate community. It demonstrated that Jewish immigrants, given the right support and opportunities, could become successful farmers and productive members of society. It challenged stereotypes and prejudices, showing that Jews were capable of hard work and self-sufficiency in agriculture. As the years went by, the South Jersey colony continued to prosper. My husband's vision and efforts had created a thriving, self-sustaining community that provided a new beginning for many Jewish immigrants. The colony's success was a testament to the power of idealism, hard work, and cooperation. Reflecting on those years, I am filled with pride and admiration for my husband's accomplishments. His dedication to the cause of Jewish agricultural development, his leadership, and his unwavering belief in the potential of his fellow Jews were truly remarkable. The South Jersey colony stands as a lasting legacy of his work and a symbol of hope and resilience for future generations. In addition to his work on domestic issues, my husband was also deeply concerned about the plight of Jews in Europe. The rise of anti-Semitism and the increasing persecution of Jews in countries like Russia and Poland were sources of great distress for him. He worked with the AJC to provide support and assistance to Jewish communities in Europe, raising funds for relief efforts and advocating for international action to address the injustices faced by Jews abroad. One of the most significant moments in his international advocacy came in 1911, when he traveled to Europe as part of an AJC delegation to investigate the conditions of Jewish communities in Eastern Europe. The delegation's findings were published in a comprehensive report that highlighted the severe hardships and dangers faced by Jews in these regions. The report garnered international attention and helped to mobilize support for Jewish relief efforts. My husband's work with the AJC was demanding and often emotionally draining, but he remained committed to the cause. his dedication to justice, equality, and the well-being of the Jewish people was unwavering. He believed deeply in the mission of the AJC and was proud to be part of an organization that was making a difference in the lives of Jews around the world. Our life during this period was busy and full of purpose. We continued to live in New York City, where we were surrounded by a vibrant and supportive community. Our children were growing up and pursuing their own paths, inspired by their father's example of service and dedication. Reflecting on those years, I am struck by the profound impact my husband had on the Jewish community and on the broader society. His work with the AJC was a testament to his belief in the power of collective action and advocacy to bring about positive change. He was a tireless champion for justice and equality, and his contributions continue to resonate to this day. As I look back on our journey, I am filled with gratitude for the opportunities we had to make a difference. My husband's legacy is one of hope, resilience, and unwavering commitment to the ideals of justice and compassion. His work with the American Jewish Committee was a significant chapter in our lives, and it remains a source of inspiration for all who seek to create a better, more just world. Chapter 10: The American Jewish Committee. By 1910, my husband's work with the South Jersey Colony and other agricultural projects had established him as a prominent figure in the field of Jewish agricultural development. His dedication to improving the lives of Jewish immigrants through education, cooperation, and hard work had earned him widespread respect and recognition. It was during this period that he became involved with the American Jewish Committee, AJC, an organization dedicated to protecting the civil and religious rights of Jews in the United States and abroad. The AJC was founded in 1906 in response to the rising tide of anti-Semitism and the growing need for a unified voice to advocate for Jewish interests. The committee's mission was to defend Jewish rights, combat discrimination, and promote Jewish welfare. My husband's experience and expertise in community development made him a valuable addition to the organization. One of the first projects my husband undertook with the AJC was to address the issue of discrimination against Jewish immigrants in the workplace. Many Jewish immigrants faced prejudice and exclusion from certain industries and professions. My husband worked tirelessly to raise awareness of this issue and to advocate for fair treatment and equal opportunities for Jewish workers. He organized meetings and conferences, bringing together leaders from various industries, labor unions, and Jewish organizations to discuss ways to combat discrimination and promote inclusivity. His efforts helped to foster greater understanding and cooperation between different communities and contributed to the gradual improvement of conditions for Jewish workers. Another important aspect of my husband's work with the AJC was his involvement in educational initiatives. He believed that education was the key to overcoming prejudice and achieving social and economic success. He supported the establishment of Jewish schools and educational programs that provided both secular and religious education to Jewish children. These schools helped to preserve Jewish culture and identity while also preparing students for successful integration into American society. My husband also played a significant role in advocating for immigration reform. The restrictive immigration policies of the early 20th century made it difficult for many Jews fleeing persecution in Europe to find refuge in the United States. He worked with the AJC to lobby for more humane and inclusive immigration laws, emphasizing the contributions that Jewish immigrants could make to American society. His advocacy efforts included writing articles, giving speeches, and meeting with government officials to discuss the importance of immigration reform. Although progress was slow, his persistent efforts helped to lay the groundwork for future changes in U.S. immigration policy. Chapter 11: The Outbreak of World War I. The early 1910s were a period of growth and progress for the Jewish community in America. My husband's work with the American Jewish Committee, AJC, continued to make significant strides in improving the lives of Jewish immigrants and advocating for their rights. However, the outbreak of World War I in 1914 brought new challenges and uncertainties that would test our resilience and commitment to our ideals. The war had a profound impact on Jewish communities around the world. Many Jews in Eastern Europe found themselves caught in the midst of the conflict, facing displacement, persecution, and unimaginable hardships. The AJC, recognizing the urgency of the situation, mobilized its resources to provide relief and support to those affected by the war. My husband was deeply involved in these efforts. He worked tirelessly to raise funds for Jewish relief organizations and to coordinate the distribution of aid to Jewish communities in war-torn regions. He traveled extensively, meeting with Jewish leaders, government officials, and humanitarian organizations to ensure that the needs of the Jewish people were addressed. One of the most significant initiatives during this period was the establishment of the Joint Distribution Committee, JDC. This organization was created in 1914 as a joint effort between the AJC, the Central Committee for the Relief of Jews Suffering Through the War, and the People's Relief Committee. The JDC aimed to provide humanitarian aid to Jewish communities affected by the war, and my husband played a key role in its formation and operation. The JDC's work was critical in alleviating the suffering of Jews in Eastern Europe. The organization provided food, clothing, medical supplies, and financial assistance to thousands of Jewish families. It also helped to establish refugee camps and provide support for displaced persons. My husband's experience in organizing and managing relief efforts was invaluable to the JDC's success. In addition to his work with the JDC, my husband continued to advocate for the rights of Jewish immigrants in America. The war had led to an increase in anti-immigrant sentiment, and many Jews faced discrimination and hostility. My husband worked with the AJC to combat this prejudice and to promote the contributions of Jewish immigrants to American society. He also focused on the importance of education and vocational training for Jewish immigrants. He believed that providing immigrants with the skills and knowledge they needed to succeed in America was essential for their integration and prosperity. He supported the establishment of vocational schools and training programs, and he worked to ensure that Jewish immigrants had access to educational opportunities. The war years were challenging for our family as well. Our children, now young adults, were deeply affected by the events unfolding around them. Marie, Vera, and Rose were all involved in various relief efforts and social causes, inspired by their father's example. Our home became a center of activity, with meetings, discussions, and planning sessions taking place regularly. Despite the hardships and uncertainties of the war, my husband remained steadfast in his commitment to his work. He believed that it was his duty to help those in need and to fight for justice and equality. His dedication and perseverance were a source of strength and inspiration for all of us. As the war continued, the situation in Europe grew increasingly dire. The Jewish communities in Eastern Europe were devastated by the conflict, and the need for relief and support became even more urgent. My husband and his colleagues at the AJC and JDC worked tirelessly to address these needs, often facing overwhelming challenges. The end of the war in 1918 brought a sense of relief and hope, but it also left a legacy of destruction and hardship. The Jewish communities in Europe were in desperate need of rebuilding and support, and my husband was committed to continuing his efforts to help them recover. The post-war period saw a renewed focus on the resettlement and rehabilitation of Jewish refugees. My husband's experience in organizing agricultural colonies and vocational training programs proved invaluable in these efforts. He worked with the JDC and other organizations to establish new settlements and provide resources for Jewish families to rebuild their lives. Reflecting on those tumultuous years, I am filled with admiration for my husband's unwavering dedication and resilience. He faced immense challenges with courage and determination, never losing sight of his commitment to helping others. His work during the war and its aftermath had a lasting impact on the Jewish community and on the broader efforts to promote justice and humanitarianism. As I look back on our journey, I am reminded of the importance of hope and perseverance in the face of adversity. My husband's legacy is one of compassion, dedication, and unwavering commitment to the ideals of justice and equality. His work during World War I and the years that followed stands as a testament to the power of collective action and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Chapter 12: The Post-War Era and New Challenges. The end of World War I in 1918 marked the beginning of a new era, both for the world and for the Jewish community. The war had left deep scars, but it also brought new opportunities for rebuilding and renewal. My husband's work with the American Jewish Committee, AJC, and the Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, continued to be of paramount importance as the focus shifted to post-war recovery and addressing the ongoing needs of Jewish refugees and communities in Europe. The devastation caused by the war was immense. Jewish communities across Europe were struggling to rebuild their lives amidst the ruins. Many had lost their homes, their livelihoods, and their loved ones. The need for humanitarian aid was urgent, and my husband, along with his colleagues at the JDC, intensified their efforts to provide relief and support. One of the primary initiatives during this period was the establishment of agricultural colonies for Jewish refugees. My husband's experience in organizing and managing such colonies proved invaluable. These agricultural settlements aimed to provide Jewish families with the means to become self-sufficient by engaging in farming and other productive activities. The colonies not only offered a chance for economic stability, but also helped to foster a sense of community and hope among the settlers. My husband traveled extensively to oversee the development of these colonies. He worked closely with local leaders, agricultural experts, and international organizations to ensure that the settlers had the resources and support they needed. The success of these colonies became a model for similar initiatives in other parts of Europe and beyond. In addition to his work with the agricultural colonies, my husband continued to advocate for the rights and well-being of Jewish immigrants in America. The post-war period saw a resurgence of anti-Semitism and xenophobia, fueled by economic uncertainty and social unrest. My husband, through his work with the AJC, fought tirelessly against discrimination and for the fair treatment of Jewish immigrants. He was actively involved in campaigns to raise awareness about the contributions of Jewish immigrants to American society. He organized public lectures, wrote articles, and collaborated with other community leaders to combat prejudice and promote understanding. His efforts helped to build bridges between different communities and foster a more inclusive and tolerant society. The 1920s also brought new challenges on the international stage. The rise of totalitarian regimes and the increasing persecution of Jews in various countries were sources of great concern. My husband, through his work with the AJC and other organizations, advocated for international action to protect Jewish rights and provide refuge for those fleeing persecution. One of the most significant achievements during this period was the creation of the Refugee Settlement Committee. This committee, which my husband helped to establish, aimed to provide safe haven for Jewish refugees and to assist them in resettling in new countries. The committee worked with governments, international organizations, and local communities to secure visas, provide financial assistance, and facilitate the integration of refugees into their new homes. The work of the Refugee Settlement Committee was both challenging and rewarding. My husband and his colleagues faced numerous obstacles, including restrictive immigration policies, bureaucratic hurdles, and limited resources. However, their dedication and perseverance paid off, and many Jewish families were able to find safety and rebuild their lives thanks to their efforts. Throughout this period, our family continued to be deeply involved in community and social causes. Our children, inspired by their father's example, pursued their own paths of service and advocacy. Marie became a teacher, Vera worked with social welfare organizations, and Rose pursued a career in medicine. Our home remained a center of activity, filled with discussions, planning sessions, and visits from friends and colleagues. As the decade drew to a close, my husband's work continued to evolve. The challenges facing the Jewish community were ever-changing, and he remained committed to addressing them with the same dedication and passion that had guided his efforts for so many years. His work was a testament to the enduring strength of the Jewish spirit and the power of collective action to bring about positive change. Reflecting on those years, I am filled with a sense of pride and gratitude. My husband's contributions to the Jewish community and to society at large were immense. His work not only provided immediate relief and support to those in need, but also laid the groundwork for future generations to build upon. His legacy is one of compassion, dedication, and unwavering commitment to the ideals of justice and equality. As I look back on our journey, I am reminded of the importance of perseverance and hope in the face of adversity. My husband's work during the post-war era stands as a testament to the power of human resilience and the enduring strength of the Jewish people. His efforts have left an indelible mark on the world, and his legacy continues to inspire us all to strive for a better, more just future. Chapter 13: The Great Depression and Continued Advocacy. The 1930s brought new challenges as the world was plunged into the Great Depression. The economic crisis affected millions of people worldwide, including Jewish communities. My husband's work with the American Jewish Committee, AJC, and the Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, took on new urgency as the focus shifted to providing relief and support during these difficult times. The economic hardship of the Great Depression hit Jewish immigrants particularly hard. Many who had found stable jobs and homes were now facing unemployment and poverty. My husband, deeply aware of the growing needs, redoubled his efforts to provide assistance. He worked closely with relief organizations to distribute food, clothing, and financial aid to struggling families. His experience in organizing large-scale relief efforts was invaluable in coordinating these initiatives. One of the key projects during this period was the establishment of soup kitchens and shelters in Jewish neighborhoods. These facilities provided essential services to those in need, offering hot meals, temporary housing, and medical care. My husband was instrumental in securing funding and resources for these projects, working tirelessly to ensure that no one was left without help. In addition to providing immediate relief, my husband believed in the importance of long-term solutions. He advocated for vocational training programs to help unemployed Jews acquire new skills and find work. These programs offered courses in various trades and professions, giving participants the tools they needed to rebuild their lives. My husband's commitment to education and self-reliance was evident in these efforts, and many individuals benefited from the opportunities provided. During this time, my husband also continued his advocacy work on a broader scale. He was deeply involved in efforts to combat anti-Semitism and protect Jewish rights. The economic instability of the Great Depression had fueled a rise in xenophobia and discrimination, and my husband was determined to address these issues head-on. He organized public awareness campaigns, wrote articles, and spoke at numerous events to promote understanding and tolerance. One of the significant achievements of this period was the successful campaign against the proposed immigration restrictions that targeted Jewish refugees. With the rise of totalitarian regimes in Europe, many Jews were fleeing persecution and seeking refuge in the United States. However, there was growing pressure to tighten immigration laws, which would have severely limited the number of refugees allowed into the country. My husband, through his work with the AJC, played a pivotal role in opposing these restrictive measures. He lobbied government officials, organized public protests, and mobilized support from various communities. His efforts contributed to the eventual defeat of the proposed restrictions, allowing many Jewish refugees to find safety and a new start in America. The late 1930s saw the escalation of anti-Semitic policies and actions in Europe, particularly with the rise of Nazi Germany. The plight of Jews in Europe became increasingly dire, and my husband's work took on an even greater sense of urgency. He was actively involved in efforts to raise awareness about the atrocities being committed and to mobilize international support for Jewish refugees. One of the most challenging aspects of this period was the growing realization of the horrors of the Holocaust. As reports of mass persecutions and killings began to emerge, my husband and his colleagues at the AJC and JDC faced the immense task of trying to provide aid and find refuge for those in immediate danger. The scale of the crisis was overwhelming, but my husband remained steadfast in his commitment to do everything possible to help. In 1939, just before the outbreak of World War II, my husband helped organize the Kindertransport, a rescue mission that brought thousands of Jewish children from Nazi-occupied territories to safety in the United Kingdom. This operation was a monumental effort, requiring coordination with various governments, organizations, and individuals. My husband's leadership and determination were crucial in making the Kindertransport a success, saving countless young lives from the impending horrors of the Holocaust. As the world edged closer to war, my husband's work became increasingly focused on preparing for the inevitable challenges ahead. He continued to advocate for Jewish rights, provide relief to those in need, and work towards creating a more just and equitable society. His efforts during the Great Depression and the years leading up to World War II were a testament to his unwavering dedication and compassion. Our family life during this period was marked by both challenges and triumphs. Despite the difficulties, we remained united in our commitment to making a difference. Our children, inspired by their father's example, continued to pursue their own paths of service and advocacy. Marie, Vera, and Rose were all actively involved in various humanitarian efforts, each contributing in their own way to the betterment of society. Reflecting on those years, I am filled with a deep sense of pride and gratitude. My husband's work during the Great Depression and the lead up to World War II was a beacon of hope in dark times. His unwavering commitment to justice, equality, and the well-being of others continues to inspire us all. As we faced new challenges and uncertainties, his legacy of compassion and dedication remained a guiding light, reminding us of the enduring power of human resilience and the importance of standing up for what is right. Chapter 14, World War II and the Fight for Survival. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 brought unparalleled challenges and horrors to the world, especially for the Jewish community. The full extent of the Nazi regime's brutality and the systematic genocide of Jews, known as the Holocaust, became increasingly apparent. My husband's work with the American Jewish Committee, AJC, and the Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, took on even greater urgency as he fought tirelessly to save lives and provide aid to those in desperate need. The early years of the war were marked by frantic efforts to rescue Jewish refugees and provide relief to those trapped in Nazi-occupied territories. My husband and his colleagues worked around the clock, coordinating with international organizations, governments, and local communities to facilitate the escape of as many Jews as possible. The obstacles were immense: restrictive immigration laws, bureaucratic red tape, and the sheer scale of the atrocities being committed. One of the most harrowing yet essential efforts was the organization of escape routes and safe havens for Jewish refugees. My husband played a key role in establishing networks that helped Jews flee from occupied Europe to neutral countries. These escape routes often involved dangerous journeys across hostile territories, and many lives were lost in the process. Despite the dangers, my husband's determination never wavered. He believed deeply in the necessity of saving as many lives as possible, even if it meant taking significant risks. The JDC's work in providing humanitarian aid was critical during this time. My husband oversaw the distribution of food, medical supplies, and financial assistance to Jewish communities in hiding or under threat. This aid was a lifeline for countless individuals who were cut off from traditional sources of support. The JDC also helped establish refugee camps and provided resources for the rehabilitation and resettlement of those who managed to escape the clutches of the Nazis. One of the most significant challenges my husband faced was the constant need to raise funds for these efforts. The war had strained resources, and securing financial support was a never-ending task. He traveled extensively across the United States, speaking at rallies, meeting with community leaders, and appealing to philanthropists for donations. His passionate pleas and tireless advocacy were instrumental in raising the necessary funds to continue the life-saving work. As the war progressed and the scale of the Holocaust became more evident, my husband's efforts intensified. He was part of a delegation that met with U.S. government officials to urge greater action in response to the atrocities. The goal was to pressure the Allied powers to take more decisive measures to stop the genocide and to open their borders to more Jewish refugees. The struggle to influence policy and public opinion was arduous, but my husband never gave up hope. One of the darkest moments came in 1942, when detailed reports of the mass extermination of Jews reached the international community. The horror and disbelief that accompanied these revelations galvanized my husband and his colleagues to redouble their efforts. They launched a massive public awareness campaign, using every available platform to inform the world about the ongoing genocide and to call for immediate action. Despite the overwhelming challenges, there were moments of hope and triumph. The successful rescue of thousands of Jewish children through efforts like the Kindertransport, which my husband had helped organize, was a source of inspiration. These children, who had been brought to safety in the United Kingdom and other countries, represented the possibility of a future despite the horrors of the present. Our family life during the war was deeply affected by my husband's work. The constant travel, long hours, and emotional toll of dealing with the unfolding tragedy were immense. Yet we remained united in our commitment to the cause. Our home continued to be a hub of activity, with constant communication and coordination efforts taking place. Our children, now adults, were also actively involved in various aspects of the relief work, each contributing in their own way. The end of World War II in 1945 brought both relief and an immense sense of sorrow. The full extent of the Holocaust's devastation was revealed, and the Jewish community faced the monumental task of rebuilding from the ashes. My husband's work did not end with the war. He continued to be deeply involved in efforts to aid survivors, rebuild communities, and ensure that the atrocities of the Holocaust were never forgotten. One of the key initiatives in the post-war period was the establishment of memorials and educational programs to honor the victims and educate future generations about the Holocaust. My husband believed passionately in the importance of remembrance and worked tirelessly to support these efforts. He also played a significant role in advocating for the creation of the State of Israel, seeing it as a vital refuge and homeland for Jews around the world. Reflecting on those years, I am filled with a profound sense of both sorrow and pride. The horrors of the Holocaust and the immense suffering endured by so many are beyond words. Yet, my husband's unwavering dedication and tireless efforts to save lives and fight for justice stand as a beacon of hope. His legacy is one of courage, compassion, and an unyielding commitment to the ideals of justice and humanity. As we moved into the post-war era, our family continued to be guided by the values and principles that had shaped my husband's life and work. The challenges we faced were immense, but so too was the strength and resilience of the human spirit. My husband's legacy lives on in the countless lives he touched and the enduring impact of his work. One of the key initiatives during this time was the fight against discriminatory housing practices. Many Jewish families faced barriers when trying to buy or rent homes in certain neighborhoods. My husband worked with the AJC to challenge these practices, advocating for fair housing laws and greater integration. His efforts contributed to significant progress in breaking down barriers and fostering more inclusive communities. Education remained a central focus of my husband's work. He believed that providing educational opportunities was essential for the empowerment and advancement of the Jewish community. He supported the establishment of schools, scholarships, and vocational training programs, ensuring that Jewish youth had access to quality education and the tools they needed to succeed. The late 1940s and early 1950s were also a time of reflection and remembrance. The world was beginning to come to terms with the full extent of the Holocaust, and there was a growing recognition of the need to honor the memory of the victims. My husband was deeply involved in efforts to establish Holocaust memorials and museums. He believed that remembering the past was essential for preventing future atrocities and educating future generations about the dangers of hatred and intolerance. One of the most significant projects during this period was the creation of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. My husband played a key role in advocating for the establishment of the museum and in securing the necessary support and funding. The museum stands as a powerful testament to the resilience of the Jewish people and a reminder of the importance of vigilance against injustice. Our family life during the post-war years was filled with a sense of purpose and renewal. We were deeply committed to supporting my husband's work and contributing to the broader efforts of rebuilding and advocacy. Our children, now adults, continued to be actively involved in various humanitarian and social causes. Their dedication and passion were a source of great pride and inspiration for us. Reflecting on those years, I am filled with a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunities we had to make a difference. My husband's work during the post-war Reconstruction period was a testament to his unwavering commitment to justice, compassion, and the betterment of humanity. His legacy is one of hope and resilience, and his contributions have left an indelible mark on the world. As we moved forward, we remained guided by the values and principles that had shaped our journey. The challenges we faced were immense, but so too was the strength and determination of the human spirit. My husband's legacy lives on in the countless lives he touched and the enduring impact of his work, reminding us all of the power of idealism and the importance of standing up for what is right. Chapter 16: A Legacy of Leadership and Advocacy. As the 1950s progressed, the world continued to change, and my husband's work evolved to meet new challenges and opportunities. His dedication to the Jewish community, his commitment to social justice, and his unwavering belief in the power of collective action remained the driving forces behind his efforts. The impact of his work with the American Jewish Committee, AJC, and the Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, continued to resonate, influencing future generations and shaping the course of Jewish history. One of the key areas of focus during this period was the civil rights movement in the United States. The struggle for equality and justice for African Americans mirrored the Jewish community's own experiences with discrimination and persecution. My husband saw this as an opportunity to build alliances and work towards a more inclusive and equitable society. He actively supported civil rights initiatives, partnering with leaders and organizations to advocate for desegregation, voting rights, and equal opportunities for all. My husband's efforts in the civil rights movement were multifaceted. He organized and participated in marches, rallies, and public demonstrations. He used his platform to raise awareness and mobilize support within the Jewish community. He also worked behind the scenes, lobbying for legislative changes and fostering dialogue between different communities. His contributions to the civil rights movement were widely recognized and appreciated, and he formed lasting friendships with many of its leaders. Education continued to be a cornerstone of my husband's work. He believed that knowledge was the key to breaking down barriers and fostering understanding. He supported initiatives to improve educational opportunities for underserved communities, both within and outside the Jewish population. He was involved in efforts to establish scholarships, mentoring programs, and educational institutions that provided access to quality education for all. One of the significant educational initiatives during this period was the establishment of summer camps and youth programs. These programs were designed to provide young people with opportunities for personal growth, leadership development, and community engagement. My husband believed that investing in the youth was essential for building a brighter future. These programs not only benefited the participants, but also helped to strengthen the bonds within the Jewish community and foster a sense of shared purpose. The 1950s also saw the growth and development of the State of Israel. My husband continued to be a strong advocate for Israel, working to garner support and resources for the young nation. He was involved in efforts to promote economic development, secure international recognition, and provide aid to new immigrants. His work with the JDC included support for programs that helped integrate Holocaust survivors and other Jewish refugees into Israeli society. My husband's leadership extended beyond his organizational roles. He was a mentor and advisor to many young activists and leaders. He believed in nurturing the next generation of advocates and equipping them with the skills and knowledge they needed to carry on the work. He was always available to offer guidance, share his experiences, and provide encouragement. His wisdom and insight were invaluable to those who sought his counsel. In our personal life, the values of compassion, justice, and community service that had guided us throughout our journey continued to shape our family's actions. Our children, inspired by their father's example, pursued careers and paths that allowed them to contribute to society. Marie became a social worker, Vera a teacher, and Rose a physician. Each of them carried forward the legacy of service and advocacy that was so central to our family's identity. As the decade drew to a close, my husband began to reflect on his life's work and the legacy he hoped to leave behind. He was proud of the progress that had been made, but he was also acutely aware of the work that remained to be done. He believed that the fight for justice and equality was an ongoing struggle, and that each generation had a responsibility to carry it forward. In 1960, my husband was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Jewish Committee. The ceremony was a poignant recognition of his decades of service and dedication. Leaders from various communities, organizations, and backgrounds came together to celebrate his contributions and to honor his impact on the Jewish community and beyond. As I look back on those years, I am filled with a profound sense of pride and gratitude. My husband's work has left an indelible mark on the world, and his legacy continues to inspire us all. His dedication to justice, compassion, and the betterment of humanity serves as a guiding light, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and working together to create a better future. Reflecting on our journey, I am reminded of the power of idealism and the enduring strength of the human spirit. My husband's legacy is one of hope, resilience, and unwavering commitment to the values that define us. As we move forward, we carry with us the lessons of the past and the determination to continue the work that he so passionately believed in. Chapter 17, The Final Years and Lasting Impact. As we entered the 1960s, my husband's influence and legacy continued to grow. Despite advancing age and the physical toll of decades of tireless work, his spirit remained undiminished. He continued to engage with the issues and causes that had defined his life, providing guidance and support to a new generation of leaders and activists. One of the significant developments during this period was the ongoing struggle for civil rights in the United States. The fight against racial segregation and discrimination had reached a critical juncture, and my husband remained deeply committed to supporting these efforts. He continued to work closely with civil rights leaders, attending marches and rallies and using his platform to advocate for equality and justice. The 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was a particularly momentous event. My husband was there, standing shoulder to shoulder with thousands of other activists as they listened to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. The experience was profoundly moving and reaffirmed his belief in the power of collective action to bring about meaningful change. During these final years, my husband also focused on documenting his experiences and insights. He believed that sharing the lessons he had learned could inspire and guide future generations. He began writing his memoirs, recounting the challenges and triumphs of his journey and offering reflections on the enduring struggle for justice and equality. His memoirs were more than just a personal account. They were a call to action. He urged readers to remain vigilant in the face of injustice, to stand up for the oppressed, and to work tirelessly for a better world. The book, published posthumously, became a source of inspiration for many and a valuable historical record of the times. In addition to his writing, my husband continued to be actively involved in various humanitarian and philanthropic endeavors. He supported efforts to provide education and vocational training for underprivileged communities, both in the United States and abroad. He also remained a staunch advocate for Israel, working to strengthen its economy and support its people. Our family life during these years was filled with a sense of purpose and reflection. We often gathered to discuss the events of the day and to share our thoughts on the work that remained to be done. My husband's passion and dedication were a constant source of inspiration for all of us. Our family life during these years was filled with a sense of purpose and reflection. We often gathered to discuss the events of the day and to share our thoughts on the work that remained to be done. My husband's passion and dedication were a constant source of inspiration for all of us. Marie, Vera, and Rose, now established in their respective careers, continued to be deeply involved in social and humanitarian causes. Their father's example had instilled in them a profound sense of responsibility and a commitment to making a difference. They carried forward his legacy in their own unique ways, contributing to the betterment of society and the advancement of justice and equality. In 1965, my husband's health began to decline. Despite his weakening physical condition, his mind remained sharp and his spirit undeterred. He continued to work from home, staying engaged with the causes he cared about and providing support and guidance to those who sought his counsel. His passing in 1966 was a profound loss for our family and for the countless individuals whose lives he had touched. The outpouring of grief and tributes from around the world was a testament to the impact he had made. Leaders from various communities, organizations, and backgrounds came together to honor his memory and to celebrate his life's work. The legacy of my husband's work is felt to this day. His contributions to the Jewish community, the civil rights movement, and humanitarian efforts have left an indelible mark on history. His unwavering commitment to justice, equality, and compassion continues to inspire new generations of activists and leaders. Reflecting on our journey, I am filled with a deep sense of gratitude and pride. My husband's life was a testament to the power of idealism and the enduring strength of the human spirit. His legacy is one of hope, resilience, and unwavering dedication to the values that define us. As we move forward, we carry with us the lessons of his life and the determination to continue the work he so passionately believed in. His memory serves as a guiding light, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and working together to create a better future for all. Chapter 18. Continuing the Legacy. After my husband's passing in 1966, our family was determined to continue his legacy of service, advocacy, and commitment to justice. We felt a profound sense of responsibility to carry forward the work he had dedicated his life to, and we set out to honor his memory by continuing to fight for the causes he had championed. One of the first steps we took was to establish the Hirsch Sabsovich Memorial Foundation. The foundation's mission was to support initiatives that aligned with my husband's values and ideals, focusing on education, social justice, and humanitarian aid. The foundation provided grants and scholarships to students from underprivileged backgrounds, funded community development projects, and supported organizations working to combat discrimination and promote equality. Marie, Vera, and Rose took active roles in the foundation, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives to the work. Marie's background in social work, Vera's experience in education, and Rose's medical expertise helped shape the foundation's programs and initiatives. Together, we worked to ensure that the foundation made a meaningful impact and carried forward my husband's vision. In addition to the foundation's work, we continued to be involved in the broader civil rights movement. The fight for racial equality was far from over, and we felt a deep sense of solidarity with those who were still struggling for justice. We participated in marches, rallies, and advocacy efforts, using our voices and resources to support the cause. The 1970s brought new challenges and opportunities for social change. The feminist movement was gaining momentum, and issues of gender equality and women's rights became central to our advocacy work. We supported initiatives aimed at addressing gender discrimination, promoting women's education, and ensuring equal opportunities for women in all areas of life. Our family also remained deeply connected to the Jewish community and the ongoing efforts to support Israel. We continued to work with organizations like the American Jewish Committee, AJC, and the Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, advocating for the rights and well-being of Jews worldwide. The foundation provided support for programs that helped integrate Jewish immigrants into Israeli society and promoted cultural and educational exchange between Israel and the diaspora. Education was a cornerstone of our work, and we believed in the transformative power of knowledge. We supported the establishment of schools, libraries, and educational programs in underserved communities. We also funded scholarships and mentorship programs to help young people pursue their academic and professional goals. Education, we believed, was the key to breaking the cycle of poverty and creating opportunities for a better future. The Hirsch Sabsovich Leadership Institute quickly became a hub of activity and innovation. Participants engaged in workshops, seminars, and fieldwork, learning from experienced leaders and gaining hands-on experience in advocacy and community organizing. The Institute's alumni went on to make significant contributions in various fields, continuing the legacy of service and advocacy that my husband had embodied. As the years passed, we continued to adapt and expand our work to address emerging issues and challenges. The 1980s brought new social and political dynamics, and we remained vigilant in our efforts to promote justice and equality. We supported initiatives focused on environmental sustainability, recognizing the interconnectedness of social and environmental issues. We also worked to address the growing crisis of homelessness, providing support for shelters, affordable housing projects, and job training programs. Our family's commitment to social justice and community service remained unwavering. We were inspired by my husband's example and driven by the belief that each of us has the power to make a difference. Through the Foundation, the Leadership Institute, and our continued advocacy work, we sought to create a better, more just world for future generations. Reflecting on the decades since my husband's passing, I am filled with a deep sense of pride and gratitude. Our journey has been one of challenges and triumphs, guided by the values and principles that defined my husband's life. His legacy lives on in the countless lives he touched and the enduring impact of his work. As we look to the future, we remain committed to carrying forward the torch of justice, compassion, and service. The lessons of the past continue to guide us, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and working together to create a better future for all. My husband's spirit remains a guiding light, inspiring us to continue the work he so passionately believed in and to honor his memory through our actions. Chapter 19: A New Generation of Leaders. As we moved into the 1990s, the landscape of social justice and advocacy continued to evolve. Our family's commitment to the values and principles my husband had championed remained as strong as ever. The Hirsch Sabsovich Memorial Foundation and the Hirsch Sabsovich Leadership Institute continued to thrive, empowering a new generation of leaders dedicated to making a positive impact on the world. The foundation expanded its reach, addressing new and emerging issues while maintaining its focus on education, social justice, and humanitarian aid. We launched initiatives to support technological literacy, recognizing the growing importance of digital skills in the modern world. These programs provided access to technology and training for underserved communities, helping to bridge the digital divide and create new opportunities for personal and professional growth. In the early 1990s, we also began to focus more on global issues. The end of the Cold War brought new challenges and opportunities for international collaboration. The Foundation supported initiatives aimed at promoting peace, democracy, and human rights around the world. We partnered with organizations working in conflict zones, providing resources for education, healthcare, and economic development. One of the significant projects during this period was our involvement in the efforts to support the newly independent states of the former Soviet Union. As these countries transitioned from communism to democracy, they faced numerous challenges. We worked with local and international partners to provide assistance in areas such as governance, civil society development, and economic reform. Our efforts helped to foster stability and promote democratic values in these emerging nations. The Hirsch Sabsovich Leadership Institute continued to be a beacon of hope and inspiration for young leaders. The program adapted to address contemporary issues, incorporating new topics such as environmental sustainability, gender equality, and global citizenship. Participants engaged in immersive learning experiences, developing the skills and knowledge needed to tackle complex social challenges. The Institute's alumni network grew, creating a vibrant community of changemakers dedicated to carrying forward my husband's legacy. These young leaders worked in diverse fields, from education and healthcare to environmental conservation and human rights advocacy. They brought innovative solutions to the challenges they faced, embodying the spirit of idealism and commitment that had defined my husband's life. As the 21st century dawned, our family remained deeply involved in the Foundation's work. Marie, Vera, and Rose continued to lead various initiatives, bringing their expertise and passion to the forefront. Their dedication ensured that the Foundation remained a dynamic force for positive change. The new millennium also brought personal milestones. Our family grew, with grandchildren and great-grandchildren who inherited the values and principles that had been passed down through the generations. They too became involved in the Foundation's work, bringing fresh perspectives and energy to our efforts. In 2001, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of my husband's birth. It was a momentous occasion, marked by reflections on his life and legacy. We held a series of events to honor his memory, including a conference that brought together leaders from various fields to discuss the ongoing challenges and opportunities in social justice and advocacy. The conference highlighted the enduring relevance of my husband's work and the impact it continued to have on the world. The Foundation also launched a new initiative to commemorate this milestone, the Hirsch Sabsovich Fellowship Program. This program provided grants and support for young activists and researchers working on innovative projects in social justice and community development. The fellowship aimed to nurture the next generation of leaders, providing them with the resources and mentorship needed to turn their ideas into action. The fellowship program quickly became one of the Foundation's flagship initiatives. Fellows came from diverse backgrounds and worked on a wide range of issues, from fighting human trafficking and advocating for LGBTQ+ rights to promoting environmental sustainability and advancing educational equity. Their projects brought about meaningful change in communities around the world, continuing the legacy of service and advocacy that my husband had established. In the years that followed, the Foundation continued to grow and adapt to new challenges. We expanded our focus on climate change and environmental conservation, recognizing the urgent need to address the global environmental crisis. We supported initiatives aimed at promoting sustainable practices, protecting natural resources, and advocating for policies that addressed climate change. Our commitment to education remained unwavering. We continued to support schools, scholarships, and educational programs, ensuring that young people had access to the tools and opportunities they needed to succeed. We also launched new initiatives to promote STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, preparing students for the demands of the modern world. Reflecting on the decades since my husband's passing, I am filled with a deep sense of fulfillment and pride. Our family's journey has been one of dedication, resilience, and unwavering commitment to the values that defined my husband's life. His legacy lives on in the countless lives he touched and the enduring impact of his work. As we look to the future, we remain guided by the lessons of the past. My husband's spirit continues to inspire us, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and working together to create a better world. The Hirsch Sabsovich Memorial Foundation and the Hirsch Sabsovich Leadership Institute stand as testaments to his vision and ideals, carrying forward his legacy of hope, justice, and compassion. Chapter 20, Embracing the Future. As the 21st century progressed, the world faced new challenges and opportunities. The Hirsch Sabsovich Memorial Foundation and the Hirsch Sabsovich Leadership Institute remained at the forefront of efforts to address these issues, guided by the values and principles that had shaped my husband's life and work. Our commitment to social justice, education, and humanitarian aid continued to drive our initiatives and inspire future generations. The rise of digital technology and the internet transformed the way we worked and communicated. We embraced these changes, recognizing the potential of technology to enhance our efforts and reach a wider audience. The Foundation launched a series of digital initiatives, including online educational programs, virtual workshops, and a comprehensive digital archive of my husband's writings and speeches. These resources made his wisdom and insights accessible to people around the world, continuing to inspire and educate. One of the key areas of focus in the early 21st century was the global refugee crisis. Conflicts and persecution in various regions had displaced millions of people, creating an urgent need for humanitarian assistance and support. The Foundation partnered with international organizations to provide aid to refugees, including food, shelter, medical care, and education. We also advocated for policies that promoted the rights and dignity of refugees, working to ensure that they were treated with compassion and respect. Climate change and environmental sustainability remained critical issues. The Foundation supported initiatives aimed at mitigating the impacts of climate change, promoting renewable energy, and protecting natural ecosystems. We funded research and projects that explored innovative solutions to environmental challenges, and we collaborated with organizations and communities to implement sustainable practices. Our educational programs continued to evolve, reflecting the changing needs of society. We expanded our support for STEM education, recognizing the importance of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in addressing the complex problems of the modern world. We also focused on promoting inclusivity and diversity in education, ensuring that students from all backgrounds had access to quality learning opportunities. The Hirsch Subsovich Leadership Institute played a pivotal role in nurturing the next generation of leaders. The Institute's programs adapted to address contemporary issues, incorporating topics such as digital activism, global citizenship, and social entrepreneurship. Participants engaged in hands-on projects, learning from experienced mentors, and developing the skills needed to lead and innovate in their communities. One of the most impactful initiatives of the Institute during this period was the Global Youth Leadership Summit. This annual event brought together young leaders from around the world to share ideas, collaborate on projects, and learn from each other's experiences. The summit fostered a sense of global solidarity and empowered participants to take action on the issues they were passionate about. In 2021, the Foundation celebrated its 50th anniversary. This milestone was an opportunity to reflect on our achievements and to look ahead to the future. We held a series of events to commemorate the occasion, including a gala that brought together past and present members of the Foundation, community leaders, and partners. The celebration highlighted the enduring impact of my husband's legacy and reaffirmed our commitment to continuing his work. The anniversary also marked the launch of a new initiative, the Hirsch Subsovich Innovation Fund. This fund was created to support groundbreaking projects and research that addressed pressing social and environmental issues. The Innovation Fund aimed to foster creativity and encourage the development of new solutions that could drive positive change. It provided grants and resources to individuals and organizations working on innovative ideas, helping to turn their visions into reality. Throughout these years, our family remained deeply involved in the Foundation's work. Marie, Vera, and Rose continued to lead various initiatives, bringing their expertise and passion to the forefront. Their children and grandchildren also became active participants, ensuring that the values and principles that had guided our journey were passed down to future generations. Reflecting on our journey, I am filled with a profound sense of gratitude and pride. The work we have done and the impact we have made are a testament to the enduring power of idealism and the strength of the human spirit. My husband's legacy lives on in the countless lives he touched and the positive change he inspired. As we look to the future, we remain committed to the ideals that defined my husband's life: justice, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of a better world. The challenges we face are significant, but so too is our determination to address them. Guided by the lessons of the past and the vision of a brighter future, we continue to carry forward the torch of hope and resilience. The Hirsch Subsovich Memorial Foundation and the Hirsch Subsovich Leadership Institute stand as testaments to my husband's vision and dedication. They are more than just organizations. They are embodiments of the values and principles that have shaped our journey. As we move forward, we do so with the knowledge that together we can create a world that is more just, more compassionate, and more hopeful for all. Chapter 21: A Legacy of Hope and Resilience. The 2020s brought new challenges and opportunities for the Hirsch Subsovich Memorial Foundation and the Hirsch Subsovich Leadership Institute. As the world faced unprecedented issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and social unrest, our commitment to justice, compassion, and innovation remained steadfast. We adapted our strategies and expanded our initiatives to address these pressing concerns, ensuring that my husband's legacy continued to make a meaningful impact. The COVID-19 pandemic, which began in late 2019 and swept across the globe, presented an immediate and profound challenge. The Foundation quickly mobilized resources to provide relief to those affected by the pandemic. We supported efforts to supply personal protective equipment, PPE, to healthcare workers, funded research into treatments and vaccines, and provided financial assistance to families and individuals who had lost their livelihoods. Recognizing the pandemic's disproportionate impact on marginalized communities, we intensified our efforts to address inequalities in healthcare, education, and economic opportunity. We supported initiatives aimed at improving access to healthcare services, promoting remote learning solutions, and providing support for small businesses and entrepreneurs struggling to survive the economic downturn. The pandemic also underscored the importance of mental health and well-being. The Foundation launched a series of programs to provide mental health support, including online counseling services, community outreach initiatives, and educational resources on coping strategies and resilience. These efforts aim to address the psychological toll of the pandemic and to foster a sense of hope and community. In parallel with our pandemic response, we continued to prioritize environmental sustainability. The Foundation expanded its support for renewable energy projects, conservation efforts, and climate advocacy. We funded initiatives that promoted sustainable agriculture, protected endangered ecosystems, and advocated for policies to reduce carbon emissions. Our goal was to contribute to a more sustainable and resilient future for the planet. The Hirsch Sabsovich Leadership Institute adapted its programs to the new realities brought about by the pandemic. Virtual learning and digital collaboration became central to our efforts. We developed online courses, webinars, and virtual workshops to continue providing leadership training and support to young activists and changemakers. The Institute's Global Youth Leadership Summit transitioned to a virtual format, allowing us to reach an even wider audience and to foster global connections and collaboration. One of the most significant initiatives during this period was the establishment of the Hirsch Sabsovich Community Resilience Program. This program aimed to strengthen the capacity of communities to respond to crises and to build long-term resilience. We provided grants and technical assistance to community organizations working on disaster preparedness, economic recovery, and social cohesion. The program emphasized local leadership and community-driven solutions, empowering residents to take an active role in shaping their futures. In the realm of social justice, we continued to advocate for equality and human rights. The Foundation supported movements for racial justice, gender equality, and LGBTQ+ rights. We funded legal advocacy, grassroots organizing, and public education campaigns to combat discrimination and to promote inclusive policies and practices. Our efforts were guided by the belief that true justice requires both systemic change and individual empowerment. Education remained a cornerstone of our work. We continued to support scholarships, school programs, and educational resources to ensure that young people had access to quality learning opportunities. Recognizing the changing landscape of education, we invested in technology and innovation to enhance educational access and quality. We also supported initiatives that promoted critical thinking, civic engagement, and global citizenship. As the decade progressed, we celebrated several milestones that highlighted the enduring impact of my husband's legacy. In 2025, we marked the 60th anniversary of the Hirsch Sabsovich Memorial Foundation with a series of events that brought together leaders, partners, and beneficiaries from around the world. These celebrations were a testament to the Foundation's lasting influence and a reminder of the power of collective action to drive positive change. The Foundation also launched the Hirsch Sabsovich Innovation Lab, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to fostering creativity and innovation in social and environmental solutions. The lab provided a collaborative space for researchers, activists, and entrepreneurs to develop and test new ideas. It served as an incubator for projects that addressed pressing global challenges and promoted sustainable development. Reflecting on these years, I am filled with a profound sense of hope and gratitude. The challenges we faced were immense, but so too was the resilience and determination of those we worked with. My husband's legacy continues to inspire us, guiding our efforts to create a more just and compassionate world. As we look to the future, we remain committed to the values and principles that have defined our journey. We are determined to carry forward the torch of justice, compassion, and innovation, building on the foundation of hope and resilience that my husband established. His spirit lives on in the work we do, and his legacy continues to shape the world for the better. The Hirsch Sapsovich Memorial Foundation and the Hirsch Sapsovich Leadership Institute stand as enduring testaments to his vision and dedication. They are more than just organizations. They are embodiments of the ideals that have guided us through times of challenge and change. As we move forward, we do so with the knowledge that together we can create a brighter and more hopeful future.